Chapter 39:17. Her heart had loosened at this moment, which also gave that unfamiliar aura a chance. That unfamiliar stream of air quickly rushed into the profound jade heart. Like a scorching fire, a scorching heat was rampaging within her profound jade heart. Again and again, it collided against her profound jade heart. This feeling was simply unspeakably bitter. But Yi Qingluo didn't even have a chance to resist. She could only forcefully endure this unfamiliar airflow's collision with her profound jade heart, which brought about a sharp pain and a feeling of being squeezed by something. The profound energy and airflow intertwined, spreading to her limbs and bones. The two energies intertwined within her body. From time to time, it was still like calm stagnant water, like ice so cold that it made one shiver. And from time to time, it was like a stormy sea, surging unceasingly, like a raging fire burning. The feeling of sometimes cold, sometimes hot. It made Yi Qingluo really felt that she was about to expand with the heat and contract with the cold, and then explode with a bang. The two energies were still merging together. Yi Qingluo, who was suffering from the torment, seemed to be able to see the two energies surging within her body, forming a huge storm within. The two energies, in the midst of intertwining and merging, became more and more vigorous. She even heard her own body, under the envelopment of the energy, emitting a kacha-kacha sound. Her bones seemed to be torn into pieces by these two energies. Yi Qingluo felt that this was a feeling of the bones and limbs in her body being reconstructed. Just at this moment, her throat finally seemed to have opened up, as she opened her mouth to let out a painful roar. Her hands suddenly clenched tightly. Boundless energy converged on her arms. The air trembled. She felt a strong and overbearing profound energy flying out from her arms. Bang bang bang. Deafening explosive sounds resounded all around. Yi Qingluo swiftly opened her eyes. The profound energy encircling her body swept out even more violently. Yi Qingluo lowered her eyes, looking at her own body. That energy that was restraining her seemed to have been shaken off by her earlier. Her entire body was light, like a feather. Just a slight movement. His body, which was falling from the sky, stood firmly on the vast expanse of white nothingness. Yi Qingluo's first reaction was to search for that figure that she saw earlier. But no matter how she looked around, she had never realized that there was someone else besides her in this vast expanse of whiteness. Silence reigned. It was lifeless. In Yi Qingluo's mind, the image of that figure earlier appeared, as he whispered beside her ear. That figure was slender and soft. That voice was as gentle as water. It gave her a very familiar and intimate feeling. He thought about it carefully. His heart suddenly tightened. It was as if he was being pricked by a needle. She slowly lowered her arms. The energy surrounding his body was still circling around excitedly. Until now, what else did Yi Qingluo not understand? That figure was helping her reconstruct her body. After being cleansed by the marrow cleansing pill, her bones also started to reform. His entire body seemed to be filled with boundless power. That figure, he was helping her. But why? Yi Qingluo couldn't understand. Suddenly, her ears twitched and she raised her head. In the vast expanse of whiteness, a huge palm stretched out. That hand pressed down on her. F***CK. What the hell is that? Yi Qingluo was about to evade. But that huge palm, accurately wrapped around her. It was like Buddha's five-finger mountain, firmly imprisoning her. But it was only at this moment when she was imprisoned. Yi Qingluo's eyelashes blinked, as her struggling movement stopped. Chapter 39:18. Xian's hand? What on earth was going on? When that large palm had completely wrapped her up, Yi Qingluo felt the rampant clamor in her body. The surging energy seemed to have been appeased as it settled down in her body. Following that, a man's mellow voice was heard from all directions. Gentle and affectionate, calling her name over and over again. Lil Luo. Lil Luo. Lil Luo. That call seemed to be filled with endless warmth and sweetness. Yi Qingluo's heart seemed to be touched by something. Following that large palm which was covering her body suddenly tightened. Her body also felt a huge pulling force. Bam! A buzzing sound rang beside her ear. The pulling force disappeared. It turned into the feeling of falling rapidly from a high altitude. The next moment, she suddenly opened her eyes and sat up with a whoosh. She opened her eyes wide as she looked straight ahead, panting heavily. Her body still had the feeling of falling, but what entered her eyes was a white gauze curtain with a few white tassels hanging down. It was no longer a vast expanse of whiteness. It was no longer endless silence. This place was not that lifeless place earlier. Yi Qingluo was just about to move. Her side suddenly leaned against a warm and thick chest. Her petite body was stained with warmth. The man's long arm held her tightly in his embrace, as though he couldn't wait to rub her into his body. Lil Luo, are you finally awake? That voice in the vast expanse of whiteness was completely compatible with that voice, as it rang beside her ear at a close distance. A familiar smell, a familiar warmth, a familiar voice. It made Yi Qingluo's consciousness gradually return. Her long curly eyelashes fluttered. Suddenly she stretched out both hands and hugged the man in front of her. Ah Xian. She opened her mouth. Her throat felt like it was on fire, as it was hoarse. Spitting out 2 words. Her throat felt as though it was cut by a knife, as the pain was unbearable. The man immediately retreated for a while, as he raised his hand to bring up the warm water beside him. Yi Qingluo was about to take the water, but her chin was suddenly lifted by a slender finger. When he raised his head, he saw a face of peerless elegance magnifying in his eyes. The man's deep, black eyes were filled with love. The distance between the two was getting shorter and shorter. She was so close that she could even see the ripples in the man's eyes. She could even count the man's dense and long eyelashes one by one. The next moment, a wave of warmth and softness pressed against him. The warm water poured into her mouth. The water ran down his throat. It also alleviated the burning sensation in her throat. The man left her lips again. Yi Qingluo blushed slightly. You. Just as he opened his mouth, he spat out a word. Then the man's lips pressed against hers again. One mouthful after another. He poured a cup of warm water into Yi Qingluo's mouth. The man put down the cup and held her in his arms again. The warmth and taste of the man still lingered in her mouth. Yi Qingluo's cheeks were dyed red. Shy. Dmo Xian lowered his eyes to look at the person in his arms, as he gave an evil smile. Yi Qingluo's little hand grabbed his robe, as she tugged hard, but didn't say a word, using her actions to express her unhappiness. The man smiled even more happily. When you were unconscious, I had been feeding you water like this. I'm already used to it, why be shy? Yi Qingluo's face turned even redder. Chapter 39:19. The man put on a serious look, used to it, the body's reflex action. Yi Qingluo buried herself in his arms as she rolled her eyes. How many days have I been unconscious for? 2 days. Dmo Xian replied. 2 days. She thought she had been unconscious for 2 months, which made Dmo Xian's body's reflex action, as though he saw through Yi Qingluo's thoughts. Dmo Xian held her little body as he brought her into his arms. The young lady's body left the bed and was brought into the man's arms. Immediately after, he lowered his head and whispered softly in her ear. Used to taking care of you. This is my lifetime's habit. Yi Qingluo's petite body trembled slightly. She was touched. And there was also the man who intentionally blew past her ear, like a feather, tickling her heartstrings. Even though they had shared the same bed for such a long time, even when facing Dmo Xian, she still couldn't help but blush and palpitate, unable to resist the temptation of Dmo Xian. The young lady avoided his playful lips as she stuffed her head into his shoulder, coughing lightly as she changed the topic. I remember. Wasn't I knocked out by Zhu Wu Xian's drug? Why did I wake up so quickly? Previously at Zhu Wu Xian's place, hadn't she been unconscious for nearly half a month? Moreover, she didn't notice it at all. This time, it was totally different. Recalling that vast expanse of whiteness earlier, and that mysterious figure, gentle voice, and the change in her body's bones, she kept all these memories, totally different from the last time. The minute she woke up, she only remembered what happened in the upper realms passageway. Because you're too restless, so I forcefully woke you up. Dmo Xian's eyes drooped as he looked at the person in his arms. The young lady buried her neck into his shoulder, revealing a fair neck, as though it was glowing. The dazzling whiteness made his gaze dim slightly. The arm which held the young lady's slender body tightened a little. Yiqing Luo didn't notice that the man's gaze on her had changed. After she heard the man's words, she even rubbed her head against the man's chest a few times before raising her head and stared at him. I'm very restless when I sleep. Am restless? The man gazed at her with his deep eyes, and even his voice became deeper and sexier. You'll only be so tired when you sleep with me. Tired to the point of being content. How would Yiqing Luo not understand his hint? A scorching gaze. It was a deep and magnetic voice, and those words that made people blush. All of them made the young girl's heart beat as if it was tired. Her face was so hot that even her body was heating up. Her beautiful face was dyed red. It was like a slowly blooming rose, captivating the soul to the extreme. Dmo Xian abruptly tightened his arms. He was afraid that if he looked at this face that could make his heart flutter, he would be unable to control himself from wanting to hold her tightly in his arms. He hugged her tightly and said, "These 2 days, you have indeed been restless. Sometimes, your body is cold, and sometimes it feels like it's burning. You even let out painful cries from time to time, as if you're in a deep sleep and in extreme pain. So, I can only enter your consciousness and wake you up." Infiltrate my consciousness? Yiqing Luo recalled that the last thing she remembered was a huge palm floating down from the sky, imprisoning her. It was indeed because of Dmo Xian that she woke up from that vast expanse of whiteness. But what Yiqing Luo didn't know was, although Dmo Xian's words were spoken in a light tone, but the truth was, in these 2 days of deep sleep. Chapter 39:20. These 2 days had practically tortured him to the point of insanity. He was on the verge of collapse. Watching Yiqing Luo howling in pain in her sleep. Looking at Yiqing Luo's alternating between cold and hot, the agonizing look. He was powerless to solve this problem. Especially after hearing that old man's song was unable to get in touch with Yiqing Luo. It was like an invisible force, completely isolating Yiqing Luo from the outside world. Dmo Xian's heart was even more restless. Fortunately, Lil Luo woke up. This was the method that old man's song had taught him. Sneaking into Yiqing Luo's consciousness space, he brought her out from within. However, the dangers involved. He didn't intend to let Yiqing Luo know. As long as his little Luo woke up safely and returned to his side, that was enough. She could feel the slight ups and downs of the man's emotions, and the strength of his hands tightening. Yiqing Luo's chin rubbed against the man's chest. Then, she raised her head and smiled at the man's chin. Both hands also tightly encircle the man's waist. She knew what Dmo Xian was feeling right now. She also knew how Dmo Xian felt these 2 days. Don't worry, I'm awake. I'm back. Am I not in your arms now? The girl's soft voice was like a cat's paw, tickling the man's heart little by little. The girl's posture and angle. He could clearly see the young girl's exquisite face in the deepest part of his heart. His pupils suddenly shrank. He could vaguely see a dim stream of light moving about. In the next instant, the man raised his hand and pressed it against the back of the girl's head. Bend over, lower your head. His thin lips pressed against the girl's lips. This kiss. It wasn't as simple as crossing the water like before. Instead, it was a fierce and passionate kiss. A man's elegant sandalwood scent filled her nose. It was as if he could knock her out at any time. Their lips were slightly cold. Everything was heating up. This kiss was domineering and filled with his wild aura. However, her movements were extremely gentle. His hands slowly wrapped around her slender waist. His palms were pressed against her waist, moving around incessantly. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo couldn't catch her breath as she laid in the man's arms. Her hand that was holding on to the man's clothes lost its strength, until Yiqing Luo's breathing tightened. Only then did the man release her. He hugged her tightly with both hands. His chin rested on the girl's slender shoulder, and his husky voice carried a hint of ambiguity. Be good, just let me hug you. His voice was deep and magnetic. The elegant sandalwood fragrance had almost confused Yiqing Luo's consciousness, especially that peerless beauty. the most bewitching face, which was so close to him. Yi Qingluo totally had no resistance at all as she sank into the beauty. The man's deep voice was slightly panting. It was very seductive. However, the man just hugged her obediently. How would Yi Qingluo not know that Dmo Xian was forcefully suppressing his desire for her? This man, although he usually flirted with her, took advantage of her, and said embarrassing things to her. But no matter what, she was the center of everything he did. No matter how uncomfortable he was only concerned about her. What a fool. Yi Qingluo's lips curled up into a sweet and blissful smile. She raised her hand and cupped the man's cheek. The man's face was hot. Just when she touched him, she could clearly feel the slight stiffness in her palm. Chapter 39:21. That peerless face was fully reflected in Yi Qingluo's pupils. The man's eyes were like a silver needle, piercing into her heart. The light in her charming eyes became softer. Her slender fingers gently traced the contours of the man's face, from his eyebrows to his eyes to his nose, and finally, her fingertips landed on his rosy lips. Yi Qingluo's charming eyes rose slightly, hooking into a coquettish arc. Her pair of fox-like eyes stared at his thin lips without blinking. Following that, the corners of her lips curled up frivolously. Her voice also became soft and charming. Since you flirted with someone, you should take responsibility till the end. The words fell. She had already leaned forward and covered the man's lips. The man's initiative and her initiative were totally different concepts. When the young lady's sweet breath approached, her gentle words were already a blatant hint. The man's eyes instantly turned pitch black. He held the young lady tightly and pressed her into his arms, turning from guest to host. From his throat, a low and sinister threat came out. You asked for it. When the time comes, don't beg for mercy. That mellow voice, because of the young lady's initiative, had been tainted with a thin layer of hoarseness. Lingering and charming, the warmth rose. Gulp. Just at this moment, suddenly a sound that spoiled the mood rang in the room. The two of them, who were stuck close to each other, immediately froze. Gulp gulp. Following that sound rang again. Dmo Xian half propped up his body, slightly glanced sideways. His line of sight fell on the young lady's flat abdomen. The young lady's robe was in a mess, revealing her fair skin. When Dmo Xian's line of sight swept over, Yi Qingluo let out an ah, then pushed away the man who was half propped up, lifted the quilt and covered her head. Vaguely, she could still hear the man's low chuckle. Yi Qingluo clutched the quilt. She couldn't wait to bang her head into the quilt. So shameful. She took the initiative to seduce Dmo Xian. She didn't expect her stomach to be so disappointing. At this juncture, it was actually so hungry that it was growling. Did it need to be so embarrassing? Mushroom. Blue skinny. Yi Qingluo silently cursed her stomach 100 times in her heart. Suddenly she felt a broad palm, covering her quilt. Her body stiffened. The man's mellow and smiling voice floated down from above. It's my fault. I forgot that you've been unconscious for 2 days. You must be hungry. Following the man's words, she could feel the man slowly bending down to the side of the blanket and talking to her at a close distance. Yi Qingluo's cheeks turned even redder. She clutched the quilt and remained motionless. Good girl, let's go eat first. Dmo Xian coaxed. Under Dmo Xian's half coaxing and half dragging, Yi Qingluo slowly lifted up a corner of the blanket, revealing a guilty little face. Then you. Are you really all right? Previously he had endured it, but she insisted on taking the initiative. This was what it meant by flirting and not wanting to take responsibility. Dmo Xian lifted the blanket and carried her up from the bed. As the girl screamed in surprise, she hooked her arms around his neck. He chuckled and whispered into her ear. It doesn't matter. After you're full, it'll be my turn to feed me. Yi Qingluo. She really shouldn't feel guilty. Of course, what Dmo Xian said about being fed by the girl after he was full was finally left unsettled. Because after Yi Qingluo had freshened up and followed Dmo Xian out for a meal. Chapter 39:22. After finding out that the reason why Yi Qingluo was unconscious was because of that fellow Zhu Wu Xian, he immediately exploded. Old Lai, in particular, slammed the table, his beard widened. What? That kid actually dared to drug you? You just wait, I'll bring the Hell Palace's people right now and screw up his red clear pavilion. With that, Lao Lai rolled up his sleeves and walked toward the door. He took a few steps. Sensing that something was amiss, Zhang Xian halted his footsteps once more and turned to look at the group of people staring at him. Even as he rolled up his sleeves, he asked, "Aren't you all going to stop me?" Everyone shook their heads in unison. Even the person involved, Yiqing Luo, had an incomparable tacit understanding as she shook her head. Not stopping, not stopping. How can we stop Old Lai's decision? Go on, I have high hopes for you. Lao Lai. Both of them stared at each other for a few seconds. Old Lai slowly put down his sleeves and coughed softly. Forget it. Looking at you, you don't seem to want to take revenge on that brat. I'm too lazy to move my old bones. As he spoke, he slowly moved back to his seat. Zoemo clicked his tongue and lazily lifted his eyelids. He cast a sidelong glance at Old Lai and sneered. This young master has heard that this Hell Palace is a madhouse, a gathering place for lunatics. Why would lunatics also be afraid of Zhu Wuxin? Lao Lai's eyes widened. I'm scared? What's there to be afraid of? I didn't want to put Madame D in a difficult position. Oh. Zoemo raised his eyebrows and dragged out the last syllable. Old Lai's face was flushed red with anger as he pressed the table and stood up, pointing at Yiqing Luo. Red Clearness Pavilion, Red Clearness Pavilion. Just by hearing this name, you can tell that this Red Clearness Pavilion was built for Madame D. One must know that this Red Clear Pavilion was a mysterious force that had been famous in the upper realm since a few years ago. Several years ago. A few years ago, Zhu Wuxin had chosen this name for Lady D. Didn't this mean that Lady D had a good relationship with Zhu Wuxin? If I go to the Red Clear Pavilion and cause trouble for Madame D, I'll feel so wronged. Old Lai rattled off a string of words. There was no pause at all. As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere in the hall became heavy. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop on the ground. The crowd sighed helplessly as they silently mourned for him as they shook their heads. Whether Qing Luo will find trouble with you, we don't know, but what we know is now you're in deep trouble. Lao Lai suddenly felt a chill on his back, as he felt an inexplicable chill. His neck twisted stiffly. She then met with Dmo Xian's icy cold eyes. Lao Lai's mouth trembled, and he immediately gave in. Yiqing Luo naturally felt the low pressure from the man beside her. She rolled her eyes at Old Lai and stretched out her little hand to hold Dmo Xian's large palm as she said, "Don't listen to his nonsense. I only found out that Red Clear Pavilion's pavilion master is Zhu Wu Xian during the auction." She paused slightly and continued, "As for why he named it Red Clearness Pavilion, I'm not too sure, but..." Her brows sunk slightly as her gaze turned slightly gloomy. "This time round he still chose to stand on the opposite side of me, and made use of my trust towards him, attempting to repeat the same trick on me. His trust in me has already turned to zero. Trusting someone was very difficult. Bit by bit, slowly accumulating trust. There was a possibility that because of one matter, it would completely crumble." Chapter 39-23. Lilu. Dmo Xian looked at the young lady's sunken expression. Although her head was lowered and her fine black hair covered her expression, but Dmo Xian could clearly feel that Yiqing Luo's current mood was very gloomy. His long arm scooped and brought the young lady into his arms. Perhaps his obsession with you is too deep, and he was bewitched by secluded palace. Yiqing Luo laid in Dmo Xian's arms openly, feeling the warmth from his body, soothing the gloomy mood in her heart. She moved her little head in his arms. Her chin rested on his chest. She raised her head slightly and suddenly laughed. "He's your love rival. Why are you still helping him to speak up?" According to Dmo Xian's character, she felt repelled towards Zhu Wu Xian. He should be happier than anyone else. But he actually helped Zhu Wu Xian to speak up? "TSK, did the sun rise from the west today?" Dmo Xian's slender fingers pinched her nose as he gently pinched it. Following that, he bent over slightly. That handsome face came close to Yiqing Luo's face. The surrounding crowd. Why did it feel like they were being neglected? But luckily, the two of them who were extremely intimate still had some conscience. They didn't really engage in lovey-dovey activities in front of everyone. Dmo Xian's face stopped at a distance of about a fist away from Yi Qingluo. His crimson thin lips curled up slightly as he revealed a devilish smile. His slender fingers slowly slid from her nose to the area between her brows as he gently rubbed it. I just don't want to see you frowning here, showing a worried look. Yi Qingluo's heart suddenly soared. A faint smile unknowingly appeared in her eyes. Her arms hooked onto Dmo Xian's neck as she smiled like a flower. Seeing this face of yours has healed my body and mind. The two of them smiled at each other as their eyes were filled with tenderness and sweetness. The surrounding crowd. All right, although the two of them weren't really lovey-dovey, but this feeling, as compared to lovey-dovey, was even more stimulating. But Yi Qingluo's mood indeed rose by a lot. In the main hall, everyone was bustling. However, in a dark corner not far away, there seemed to be a layer of frost covering it. Some of the servants of the Qiao mansion who passed by felt an inexplicable shiver. In the dark, a red figure was faintly discernible. The man's face was as cold as ice, without the slightest emotion. Especially those eyes that were like stagnant water. It was as if he would freeze to death under his ice with just a glance. He wasn't close to the hall, but he wasn't far either. He could clearly hear all the voices in the hall. In his mind, the girl's clear voice kept repeating over and over again. His trust in me has been reduced to zero. Trust? Did she no longer trust him? He just wanted to keep her by his side. He just didn't want her to treat him so coldly again. Obviously, she belonged to him, didn't she? Did he really do something wrong? Zhu Wuxin's hands that were hanging by his side slowly clenched. Blue veins popped out of his fist. It was as if he was suppressing some kind of emotion in his heart. Suddenly, his hand opened up as his vision swiftly turned towards a certain direction behind him. His eyes, which were like still water, turned into a sharp blade as it shot out. Young Patriarch Chu, don't, it's me. Chapter 39-24. Zhu Wuxin's expression didn't change at all when he saw who it was. That slender and soft figure leaned against Zhu Wuxian's body. Young Master Zhu, scram. The slender figure had yet to approach him. Zhu Wuxin flicked his sleeve, avoiding the woman's approach. An invisible wave of air isolated the woman a step away from him. The woman didn't get angry. Instead, she looked at him with a smile. Young Master Chu, why are you hiding here alone? Don't worry, as long as you follow the instructions of the revered Yi Qingluo, will definitely belong to you. Zhu Wuxin's eyes flashed. The lady naturally didn't miss his reaction as she smiled delicately. You must know, even if Yi Qingluo is with the Overlord now, but they will absolutely not be able to walk to the end. Only young Patriarch Chu, who has been recognized by the Overlord, is Yi Qingluo's future husband. Zhu Wuxin's pupils suddenly constricted. He didn't even look at the woman. He moved. It disappeared into thin air. Not even a red afterimage was left behind. The woman quietly looked at the horizon in the direction that Zhu Wuxin had disappeared. The smile on his face faded, and his eyes were like those of a venomous snake, flickering with an insidious ruthlessness. He clenched his fists tightly. Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingluo. Whether it was Di Zun or Zhu Wuxin, all of them were circling around Yi Qingluo. What was so good about her? B*TC. The atmosphere in the room was still warm. The silent Gui Wu, who had been leaning against the corner, suddenly raised his head and looked at Yi Qingluo. His gaze was direct. Just as he was about to look at Yi Qingluo had already sensed his line of sight and met Ghost Marshall's gaze in puzzlement. Gui Wu slowly walked towards Yi Qingluo until he stood in front of her. Yi Qingluo was nestled in Dmo Xian's arms. Gui Wu stood up. He was also facing Dmo Xian. But Gui Wu's line of sight, from the start till the end, had remained on Yi Qingluo. It was a young and handsome face. But those eyes were full of hardships and complicated emotions that no one could see through. Yi Qingluo felt uncomfortable being stared at. She shifted her body and adjusted her position in Dmo Xian's arms as she coughed lightly. Ghost Martial Master? There were no ripples in Ghost Marshall's deep and cold eyes. However, the words that came out of his mouth were like a raging storm. Your body has undergone a transformation. Ha! Dumbfounded expressions appeared on everyone's faces, as they did not understand the meaning behind Gui Wu's words. Yi Qingluo was slightly startled. She naturally knew what the change that Gui Wu was talking about was. She was surprised. Gui Wu had actually seen through this point. Gui Wu stared at Yi Qingluo for some time before he suddenly narrowed his eyes in an unfathomable manner. Looks like the 2 days you were in a coma, not only did it not affect your body, instead it allowed your body to improve. What kind of riddle are you guys playing? Zhou Mo raised his red phoenix eyes and asked. Gui Wu looked at Zhou Mo and said indifferently, Student Yi Qingluo's body has undergone transformation. Now her bone structure has already broken away from the mortal body, and can withstand even more powerful than an overlord. Transform? Leaving the mortal body? Was he talking about Yi Qingluo? Everyone's gazes shifted onto Yi Qingluo in unison. That blatant gaze made Yi Qingluo burrow into Dmo Xian's arms, and even took up Dmo Xian's arm to block in front of her. Chapter 39-25. Everyone shook their heads in unison. I have never seen a beauty who has left her mortal body. Yi Qingluo. She couldn't be bothered with them as she set her sight on Gui Wu. It seemed that Gui Wu was very clear about the transformation of the bone frame. After pondering for a moment, she asked, Master Gui Wu, from what you've said, does this mean that my body can now withstand even more powerful strength? She paused slightly and continued with an example. For example, if I use the power of the divine relic? Gui Wu met Yi Qingluo's vague hopeful gaze and nodded slowly. Yi Qingluo's eyes lit up. Previously, she had forcefully used the power of the divine relic to raise her strength in a short period of time to tide over the crisis. The price she had to pay was the overdraft of her body, and the divine phoenix profound heart jade in her body was likely to cause a backlash. All these reasons stemmed from the fact that her body could not withstand the overload of power. Now her bone frame had been reconstructed. All the impurities had been eliminated, separated from the mortal body. After withstanding the power of the divine relic, and even more powerful forces, her body could finally bear it. But, under Yi Qingluo's bright eyes, Gui Wu suddenly said, Don't be happy too early. Even if your bone frame has been transformed, it doesn't mean that you can mess around. When she was still a mortal body, Yi Qingluo time and time again did something which made one worried. If she relied on her body to withstand the powerful forces to mess around, no matter how solid the foundation was, it would be exhausted over and over again. Yi Qingluo's spirit would not be able to bear it. I know. Yi Qingluo nodded seriously. I won't mess around. Everyone made a tisk sound. Apparently no one believed Yi Qingluo's guarantee. Dmo Xian stretched out his hand and knocked on her head. You'd better remember what you said now. Yi Qingluo felt pain as she turned her head and stared at him. Why don't you believe what I said? Dmo Xian sneered. Do you think that you believe what you said? Yi Qingluo. All right, based on her previous behavior. She didn't believe it herself. Dmo Xian dangerously narrowed his eyes and held her chin. Why? Tacit approval? That deep voice carried an obvious threat. Yi Qingluo was forced to look him in the eye. She didn't even dare to avoid his eyes. Her long eyelashes blinked for a while, but Dmo Xian still maintained that dangerous smile. Her honey trap did not work at all. Therefore, he decisively gave in. How could there be a tacit agreement? This is a very serious expression. I will definitely remember what I'm saying now. Dmo Xian seemed to believe it as he nodded lightly. Yi Qingluo let out a sigh of relief, just as she was about to squirm out from Dmo Xian's embrace. Her waist tightened, and her delicate body was pressed into the man's arms again. Then he lowered his magnetic voice and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear. If you can't remember it, I'll use my own method to make you remember it. His last 4 words. He even deliberately lowered his voice. That magnetic, seductive, and drawn-out voice carried another kind of emotion. Yi Qingluo's face suddenly flushed red. What a shameless man. Everyone was already used to their little interactions, and didn't notice Yi Qingluo's blushing face. Chapter 39-26. Yi Qingluo was stunned and hurriedly stood up from Dmo Xian's arms. Yes. Old Master Huangfu wants to bring those three back to the Huangfu family. She wondered how Pei Sheng and Old Master Huangfu had developed over the past 2 days. She was not worried about Pei Sheng's safety. 2 days ago, the assassins sent by Huangfu Fengyan failed to assassinate Pei Sheng, startling the old man. Even if the three of them wanted to make another move, they did not have the opportunity. Of course, if they made a move against Pei Sheng at this critical juncture, he was definitely digging his own grave. No matter how stupid they were, they would never do that. Moreover, that kid Pei Sheng had already evolved now, and he knew how to transform into a white lotus flower to protect himself in Gu Zishi so that he could strive for the greatest benefits for himself in Gu Zishi. Therefore, a person's growth had to depend on their own efforts. If she interfered too many times, it would only make Pei Sheng more dependent on her. In the end, no one gave him any advice, and he fell into a state of confusion. As though she could see through Yi Qingluo's thoughts, Mo Yuing opened her round adorable big eyes and opened her mouth. They get along very well, and I can tell that old Master Huangfu sincerely wants to bring Pei Sheng home. Yi Qingluo nodded. Let's go take a look, perhaps we can still make it in time to send old Master off. In next to no time, the group arrived at the treasure-gathering exchange. After 2 days of repair, the houses that had been destroyed by the assassins had been temporarily repaired, so it wasn't too messy. Just as the group walked into treasure-gathering hall, a slender figure stood in the middle of the hall. That person had a tall and straight posture, a grave and stern face, and an outstanding temperament. He just stood there in silence. It could attract everyone's attention. Yi Qingluo and the rest naturally set their sights on that person first. At that moment, everyone's expression changed. Kitty Li was the most impatient. She suddenly jumped out of Zomo's arms and pounced towards that person. You actually dare to appear here? Kitty will scratch you to death. Little wildcat. Zomo's expression changed slightly, and he immediately chased after it. Before that person could make a move, he pulled Kitty Li into his arms. With a quick roll, he dodged the man's attack. Meanwhile, a black figure moved and quickly appeared in front of Zomo. With a raise of his hand, a black light condensed. The two forces collided, creating traces of electricity. It was tight and gradually dissipated. The shockwaves in the air gradually subsided. This unforeseen event caused the atmosphere in the hall to become even more tense. The group of people stared at that person with tensed emotions. The man turned around and looked at them expressionlessly. Finally, a pair of cold eyes that were as calm as still water fell onto Yi Qingluo. Why are you guys here? Suddenly, Huangfu Zhentian walked out from the inner court with a smile on his face. The smile on his face was very sincere. His previous majesty was nowhere to be seen. As he walked out, he smiled at the expressionless man and said, Pavilion Master Chu, I'll have to trouble you to wait for me. It doesn't matter. The man's thin lips moved slightly as he spat out these 3 words. Huangfu Zhentian was still smiling. As he smiled, he felt that the atmosphere in the hall wasn't right. He took a look at the expressionless man beside him, and looked at the tensed-up group of people who were glaring angrily. Cough. You guys should all know each other. This is Red Clear Pavilion's Pavilion Master Chu Wu Xian. This side are that fellow Pei Sheng's friends. Chapter 39-27. After the introduction, he eased the atmosphere and continued. I heard that Miss Yi and Pavilion Master Chu are old acquaintances, so I don't think I need to introduce you any further. No need. Zhu Wu Xian stared at Yi Qingluo. I understand her better than anyone else. Huangfu Zhentian. Why does it feel like the atmosphere is getting weirder and weirder? Yi Qingluo and the rest looked at Zhu Wu Xian warily. He truly hadn't expected Chu Wuxin to appear at the treasure-gathering exchange. Moreover, it seemed like they were here to cause trouble. Yi Qingluo had not expected to meet Zhu Wu Xian here. She thought that Zhu Wuxin would not dare to appear before her in the near future. What astonished Yi Qingluo the most was, Zhu Wuxin had actually changed out of his usual red clothes. Today he was dressed in a white robe, which made him look even more cold and aloof. The unapproachable aura around him was even more obvious. To be honest, although Zhu Wuxin was dressed in red, his temperament did not seem out of place. But it was obvious that he was more suited for white. This color was too compatible with him. However, Yi Qingluo's slender brows creased slightly. There was an indescribable feeling of unease in his heart. If I remember correctly, Zhu Wuxin had always been dressed in red. This was because the original owner, Yi Qingluo, had once said to let him always wear red clothes. Zhu Wuxin kept this in mind. He also used his actions to show how much he valued the original owner. But now, she had actually swapped out her red dress. This represented that he had let go of Yi Qingluo. She was not reminiscing about Zhu Wuxin's feelings for her. It was not because Zhu Wuxin had let go of this relationship and felt that it was a pity. Instead, somehow, he felt that something was wrong. Zhu Wuxian's sudden change was really too strange. Would someone as stubborn as Zhu Wuxin really give up so easily? Yi Qingluo pursed her pink lips slightly as her little hand gently held the man's big palm beside her. She raised her head slightly and looked at the man. He also transmitted the uneasiness and doubts in his heart. The girl subconsciously relied on him. The man, who was not in a good mood, suddenly smiled. He held the young girl's small hand. His long and narrow peach blossom eyes were filled with a faint smile. With one hand, he pulled her into his embrace and soothed the uneasiness in the girl's heart. When the girl's breathing calmed down, Dmo Xian then slowly raised his head. His long and narrow peach blossom eyes no longer had the tenderness from earlier, as he calmly and indifferently looked at Zhu Wuxian. Pavilion Lord Chu, long time no see. Zhu Wuxin did not respond, but his line of sight was fixed on the man's hand, which was holding the girl tightly. Dmo Xian shot a glance at his own hand, which was wrapped around the young lady's body as his thin lips curled up slightly, containing some ridicule. Since Pavilion Lord Chu said that you understand Lil Luo. Don't tell me that you don't know that Lil Luo, or doesn't want to see you at all? Zhu Wuxian's eyes finally reacted, like ripples on the surface of water. But in the next instant, everything returned to normal. Huang Fuzhentian realized it. The two sides were not on good terms with each other. He, who was stuck between the two of them, felt a little embarrassed. Fortunately, Pei Sheng and Gu Zixi sensed that the atmosphere outside was not right and came out in time. Chapter 39-28. Zhu Wuxian returned to Heaven Realm? In that case, Zhu Wuxian was indeed someone from Heaven Realm? Then why did he hide in Nirvana Realm? Back then, he was pursued by others and hid in Yi Qingluo's courtyard, creating a pass with Yi Qingluo. Later on in Nirvana Realm, he established his own force. What identity did he have? At this moment, to rush back to Heaven Realm. Was it because of her, or was it a part of Secluded Palace's plan? Yi Qingluo's slender brows creased tightly as her suspicions towards Zhu Wuxian grew. 2 days ago he drugged her. He probably wanted to bring her back to Heaven Realm? You woke up very quickly. Zhu Wuxian's icy cold voice interrupted Yi Qingluo's thoughts. It also interrupted her probing gaze. That drug won't have any effect on your body. I won't do anything to hurt you. Zhu Wuxian looked at her fixedly as he explained word by word. I came to treasure gathering because I wanted to wait for you. Not waiting for Yi Qingluo to reply, Kitty Lee's face had already turned red from anger as she flailed around in Zomo's arms. Pooey. What won't hurt, sister? What you did is hurting, sister. Drugging sister, and still dare to appear in front of sister. Frivolous man, don't stop Kitty. Kitty wants to scratch him to death. Zhu Wuxian didn't even blink his eyes. He turned a deaf ear to Kitty Lee's accusations. His gaze had been fixed on Yi Qingluo from the start till the end. His gaze was calm without any fluctuation of emotions. But Yi Qingluo could clearly feel that the gaze he shot towards her was scorching hot. She frowned slightly as her expression turned cold. What are you waiting for me for? I want to speak to you alone, Zhu Wuxian said. No way. Kitty Lee rejected without thinking. Zhu Wu Xian looked at Yiqing Luo quietly, waiting for her reply. Yiqing Luo's lips pursed even tighter. The man beside her suddenly pushed her body forward. Yiqing Luo was stunned as she looked at him sideways. But towards Dmo Xian's doting eyes. Like obsidian, it shone with an eye-catching radiance. Looking over, what was reflected in his eyes was her face. He raised his hand and brushed away the stray hair on the girl's cheek. The person who understands you best is me. Go. Beside her cheek was the touch of a man's fingertips. It carried a man's elegant sandalwood scent. Her eyelashes fluttered. Suddenly, his small body leaned forward. She hooked her wrist around the man's neck. She abruptly pulled the man down, then tiptoed and planted a kiss on his lips. The girl's eyes were full of smiles. Good boy. She withdrew her hand and took a few steps back from Dmo Xian. The moment he turned around, the expression on his face became indifferent. All right. This word was a reply to Zhu Wuxin. After saying those words, she took the lead and walked toward the inner courtyard. Zhu Wu Xian was stunned for a moment. To be more precise, it was from the moment Dmo Xian hugged Yiqing Luo tightly, that indistinctly provocative sentence, "The person who understands you the most is me." His thoughts were a little absent-minded, especially when he saw Yiqing Luo taking the initiative to kiss Dmo Xian. His heart felt like it was being torn apart by something. Until the young lady's figure disappeared from his sight. Only then did Zhu Wu Xian's calm eyes ripple. Following that, he chased up to Yiqing Luo's footsteps. At the same time, Dmo Xian raised his devilish phoenix eyes and was about to tease. Yo! I didn't expect our overlord to be so magnanimous. He actually. Chapter 39-29. Because the air pressure in the lobby instantly turned frosty. The air seemed to have frozen. Everyone couldn't help but shiver. They all turned to look at the Dizun, who was sitting stiffly at the side with a gloomy face. That handsome and elegant face was covered with frost. His entire body was burning with an aura that was about to explode. Everyone. In front of Yiqing Luo, his magnanimity and generosity were all an act. Inner courtyard. Yiqing Luo stopped in her tracks as she turned her head to look at Zhu Wu Xian. What do you want to say? He turned his head. Coincidentally, he bumped into a white robe. This was the first time he saw Zhu Wuxin wearing white, so he was not used to it. Her momentary daze was seen by Zhu Wuxin. The lines on Zhu Wu Xian's face clearly softened. Even his gaze towards Yiqing Luo had turned gentle. I know you don't want to see me. Why did you still appear when you knew? Do you really think that I really don't dare to make a move against you? Yiqing Luo's expression turned cold. Zhu Wuxin shook his head. I want to see you. Yiqing Luo replied. Just because you want to see me, I must see you. I'm going to Heaven Realm for a period of time, and there's a possibility that I won't be able to see you for a very long period of time. Zhu Wu Xian seemed as though he couldn't hear the impatience in Yiqing Luo's tone. While he was talking, his eyes were fixed on Yiqing Luo without blinking. His tone was sincere and serious. When Yiqing Luo heard that, her eyes suddenly narrowed. Zhu Wu Xian, you're going to Heaven Realm. Is it because of secluded Darkness Palace's plan? Zhu Wuxin opened his mouth, wanting to speak. But after meeting Yiqing Luo's smiling yet not smiling expression, the words at the tip of his tongue were stuck in his throat. He lowered his eyes slightly, avoiding Yiqing Luo's gaze. I know you don't like people lying to you, so. This question, I'm unable to answer you. In other words, I guessed correctly. Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly. Zhu Wu Xian, didn't you say that you've already cancelled the collaboration with the Palace of Darkness? Why did you return to the Palace of Darkness? Clearly her voice was very calm. Even his tone did not fluctuate in the slightest. Yet it brought with it an extremely oppressive feeling. Zhu Wuxin's head was still lowered, not looking at Yiqing Luo's expression. Evidently, he had decided to remain silent. Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly. If Zhu Wu Xian was unwilling to answer, no matter how she asked, Zhu Wu Xian would not answer. She simply couldn't be bothered to communicate with Zhu Wuxin anymore. Since you don't want to talk, you specially came to find me just to bid farewell? Yes. This time, Zhu Wuxin responded. He even raised his head. Also, I want to tell you. Chu Wuxin pursed his thin lips. This was something he had never done before. Yi Qingluo could tell that he was nervous. Zhu Wu Xian was silent for several breaths of time. Then he continued. Previously, I did something that made you unhappy, but I do not regret it. Because I want you to accompany me. Yi Qingluo laughed in anger. You want me to accompany you so you make use of my trust in you to drug me? Zhu Wuxin, you claim that you understand me, but are you sure that you really understand me? Chu Wuxin continued to stare at her with his extremely dark eyes. After Yi Qingluo finished her words, he then shook his head as his voice became gentler. I don't regret what I did. The only thing I regret is to make use of your trust. Yi Qingluo laughed out of anger once again. She expressed that she really couldn't understand Zhu Wu Xian's train of thought. I only want to tell you, everything that I did was not entirely for myself. Chapter 39:30. What do you mean? What did he mean by be careful of the people around her? The people around her were either lovers or brothers. They had gone through life and death together. They were all people she could absolutely trust. Zhu Wu Xian didn't say much. He raised his hand and stretched it towards Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingluo was astute as she avoided Zhu Wu Xian's hand with a vigilant look. Zhu Wu Xian's hand froze in midair. Several breaths later, his slender fingers retracted one by one. His dark and gloomy eyes looked at her with an obvious sadness, as though Yi Qingluo's actions had hurt him. But Yi Qingluo could only capture this little bit, a peculiar emotion. By the time she wanted to delve deeper into it, Zhu Wu Xian had already leapt onto the top of the wall. His white robe fluttered, showing his cold and aloof arrogance, like a winter plum. He stood on top of the wall and gazed deeply at Yi Qingluo for a moment. Following that, he had already disappeared from Yi Qingluo's vision. Yi Qingluo's brows knitted tightly as she retracted her gaze. What did Zhu Wu Xian mean? Why did he say such things to her out of nowhere? Based on Zhu Wu Xian's character, he would say such things. It shouldn't be as simple as sowing discord. He must have heard some news from the secluded palace. She didn't know what was wrong with Zhu Wu Xian, since he had already appeared to remind her. Couldn't he just make things clear before he left? It was better not to say anything than to leave half of it. She was cursing silently in her heart. Suddenly, she felt a tight grip on her waist. A scorching and wide embrace enveloped her completely. Her body was being held tightly by someone. On top of her head, there was a heavy object as a mellow voice with a smile, yet not a smile, floated down. He's already gone far away and you still haven't regained your senses. Could it be that you can't bear for him to leave? That voice obviously had a hint of laughter, but Yi Qingluo heard the sarcasm in it. Yi Qingluo hurriedly stretched out her hand and hugged the person's waist. No, I'm just thinking about what he said earlier. On top of her head, the man sneered. His laughter was a little cold. Yi Qingluo rubbed against his arms, but it wasn't able to alleviate the man's gloomy atmosphere. Pei Sheng and the others had already walked in. On seeing Yi Qingluo, he cried out and started to complain. Aluo ah! Don't think that the overlord appeared to be very magnanimous. The minute you and Zhu Wu Xian arrived at the inner courtyard, his entire person was like a huge ice mountain. We're about to be frozen into ice. As soon as he finished speaking, Dmo Xian shot him a glare. Pei Sheng was so frightened by his sharp gaze that she immediately covered her mouth. Nestled in Dmo Xian's arms, Yi Qingluo sighed helplessly. Her small hands clutched Dmo Xian's clothes as she slowly raised her head. Even without Pei Sheng's explanation, she was well aware of it. Dmo Xian was the king of vinegar. How could he really not mind her being alone with Zhu Wuxin? He dotingly took the initiative to let her speak to Zhu Wuxin alone. He just didn't want to make things difficult for her. Of course, it was also because he believed in the relationship between her and Zhu Wuxin. But Yi Qingluo also knew that he was feeling rather unhappy. Just like now, after sensing that Zhu Wuxin's aura had disappeared, filled with unhappiness, he looked for her to pacify him. All right, my obedient Xian. Her hand followed his clothes and stretched out to his face. Following that, her fingers pinched. Pulling the corners of the man's lips, he pulled out a smile. Maya Xian is even more enchanting when he smiles. Chapter 39-31. Yi Qing Luo. A man who couldn't satisfy his desires was really scary. Speaking of which, what did Zhu Wu Xian tell you? Is there a need to whisper? Zoemo was very curious. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips and shook her head. It's still those ridiculous words, don't take it to heart. Huangfu Zhentian had a dazed look. Didn't Pavilion Master Zhu specially accompany me back to the Heaven Realm? One person left just like that? Then why was Zhu Wu Xian squatting at the treasure gathering so early in the morning? Accompanying is just an excuse. Zhu Wu Xian is obviously waiting for little Qing Luo. Zoemo clicked his tongue as his devilish phoenix eyes rose, as he continued to say as though he wished for the world to be in chaos. You are just a springboard. Huangfu Zhentian. Was it possible that taking the benevolent route wasn't able to control the youngsters? Yi Qing Luo stared at Zoemo, afraid that Zoemo would say something shocking as she hurriedly changed the topic. Old Master Huangfu, when do you intend to leave? Immediately. When Huangfu Zhentian said this, the expression on his face had some slight changes. He took a deep look at Pei Sheng and said, all along, I wanted to thank you personally. If it wasn't for the fact that you helped that lad, I'm afraid that I wouldn't be able to see that lad today. He paused slightly and continued. And that day, Pei Sheng suffered an assassination attempt. I will handle it and absolutely will not let Pei Sheng suffer any grievances. She could tell that Huangfu Zhentian really couldn't bear to part with Pei Sheng. These 2 days, the relationship between the both of them had deepened. Even Pei Sheng was willing to change his way of addressing him as grandfather. Yi Qing Luo smiled slightly. Huangfu Zhentian spoke solemnly. Miss Yi, gathering treasure is Pei Sheng's wish and also his dream, so for the next few days, I'll have to trouble you. Saying that, Huangfu Zhentian straightened his body as he slowly bowed towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Yi Qing Luo hurriedly stretched out her hand as she stopped Huangfu Zhentian. The current Pei Sheng really doesn't need us to worry about him. Just let him grow up on his own. Yes, grandfather, don't worry about me. Pei Sheng went up and held Huangfu Zhentian's hand. The both of them exchanged a smile. This heartwarming scene was heartwarming. However, there were also people who were so angry that they gritted their teeth. Yi Qing Luo's sharp senses detected a strange fluctuation in the air. She gave him a sidelong glance. He saw 3 figures standing behind the temporarily built withered tree. Huangfu Fengyan was glaring at them with hatred. The fierceness and hatred in his eyes. It was as if it wished to swallow them whole. A powerful aura spread out. Naturally, it attracted the attention of the others. When Huangfu Zhentian looked over and saw Huangfu Fengyan's savage and warped face, his face instantly darkened. Evil creature. Huangfu Zhentian was unable to restrain his rage and grunted coldly. What are you glaring at? Did I punish you wrongly? Huangfu Fengyan instinctively shrunk her neck when she heard Huangfu Zhentian's voice, and she hid behind big brother and third brother. Huangfu Qifei's lips curled into a warm smile. No matter what grandfather does, it's always right. This time's matter is indeed Fengyan's fault. Towards grandfather's punishment, Fengyan doesn't dare to not accept it. Saying that, he lowered his head slightly and looked at Huangfu Fengyan as he appeased her in a warm voice. Fengyan, am I right? Chapter 39-32. Until Huangfu Fengyan was dragged out by Huangfu Qifei. Yi Qing Luo then noticed. Huangfu Fengyan's temperament had undergone a huge change. Just 2 days ago, when he saw her, she was still arrogant and domineering. It was as if she did not take these people from the earth domain seriously, and had a high and mighty attitude. But now, her entire body was shrouded in a layer of deathly aura. There was a deathly aura between his brows. The light in his eyes dimmed a lot. Wait a minute. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly as she carefully sized up Huangfu Fengyan. After noticing something, she suddenly laughed out loud. His curved eyebrows were filled with mockery. Huangfu Fengyan's expression instantly darkened. His eyes were filled with uncontrollable resentment. If it wasn't for Huangfu Qifei holding her wrist tightly, she would have died. Perhaps, Huang Fu Fengyan almost couldn't control the anger in her heart as she pounced towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo seemed as though she couldn't see Huang Fu Fengyan's madness. His laughter became more and more mocking. He didn't expect the old man to be so ruthless. The old man actually directly crippled more than half of Huang Fu Fengyan's profound rank. Yes, most of them. Previously, Huang Fu Fengyan's talent was passable, and she had the Huang Fu bloodline. Moreover, she had been supported by many resources since she was young. Her profound rank was at least at the 7th or 8th level of the Sage Profound Realm. But the current Huang Fu Fengyan, judging from the fluctuations of the profound waves on her body, I'm afraid he's only hovering around the Sky Profound Realm. In fact, it was even showing signs of slipping. Profound Sky. If they were placed in the Nirvana realm, they would be the best among the geniuses. However, Huang Fu Fengyan was someone from the Heaven realm. In the Heavenly realm, even the lowly people were like dust. Their strength was probably above Huang Fu Fengyan's. To the arrogant Huang Fu Fengyan, this move was indeed the cruelest punishment. It was no wonder that Huang Fu Fengyan was looking at them, as if they were her father's murderer. No, even killing one's own father wouldn't have such a huge grudge. Slut! Looking at Yiqing Luo's ridiculing smile, Huang Fu Fengyan was so infuriated that her eyes turned red. She struggled to pounce towards Yiqing Luo. His face was hideous and terrifying. Shut up! Huang Fu Zhentian berated angrily. Looks like the punishment I gave you isn't enough. You still don't understand etiquette, right? Grandfather. Huang Fu Fengyan was angered to the point of tears. She. Before he could finish, she was forcefully pulled back by Huang Fu Qifei. Huang Fu Qifei shook his head at her, then said gently, Grandpa, it's getting late, let's return to the Heaven realm first. Huang Fu Zhentian grunted coldly, and didn't even want to take another glance at Huang Fu Fengyan. He gave Peixing a few instructions. Huang Fu Zhentian led the three of them away from Treasure Gathering Hall. Before leaving, Yiqing Luo noticed that Huang Fu Qifei's indistinct vision fell onto her. That gaze made Yiqing Luo feel uncomfortable. In the Huang Fu trio, she couldn't see through him at all. It was this Huang Fu third young master Huang Fu Qifei, compared to young master Huang Fu Dongyu. This third young master was the truly difficult person to deal with. Moreover, it could be seen. Although Huang Fu Dongyu was the eldest young master, he still followed Huang Fu Qifei's opinion. Earlier, Huang Fu Qifei's meaningful gaze, what did it mean? Why, after Zhu Wuxian left, you can't bear to let those few trashes from the Huang Fu family leave? Above her head, a man's deep voice floated down, with a smile yet not a smile tone. The sense of danger was extremely thick. All right, a jealous man couldn't be offended. Chapter 39-33. Glancing at the group of people around, it was obvious that they were waiting for a good show. Yiqing Luo's lips curled. Suddenly, she stretched out her arms and hooked onto Dmo Xian's neck, putting all her body weight on the man. She raised her head and looked at Dmo Xian with a smile. The Overlord, are you so unconfident in your own charm? Saying that, her slender fingers had already clasped the man's chin. The smile on the corner of her mouth was like a rogue who teased a good family man. She tilted her head and her voice became gentler. At present, the Overlord's face is my favorite face, and it is also this face that makes me captivated. So captivated that I can't see anyone else. She sighed helplessly and said, Tell me, I have you, a little devil. Who else can I not bear to part with? Pfft. The crowd who were watching the show immediately burst out laughing. One by one, they gave a thumbs up, so impressed that they simply couldn't say a word. Yiqing Luo ignored that group of people, hooked onto Dmo Xian's neck, and kept swaying her body. Little beauty, do you think? What I said is reasonable. Dmo Xian's eyes became darker and darker. His burning gaze seemed to want to swallow Yiqing Luo. Immediately, under Yiqing Luo's gaze, his thin lips curled up, so handsome that it made one's heart skip a beat. In that case, you only fancy my face? The man's voice sounded very deep. Yiqing Luo released his chin and stuffed herself into the man's arms. The corners of her lips curled up. How can you say it in such a superficial way? You originally belonged to me. Dmo Xian's brows rose. but he didn't say another word. Yiqing Luo hugged his waist again. Looks like it's time for you to prove your charm. She moved closer to his ear and whispered these words. It was completely hinting at something. Dmo Xian heard that. His eyes deepened a few notches. He even used that meaningful, seductive peach blossom eyes to stare deeply at her for a while. Yiqing Luo's legs went soft from that gaze. Somehow she felt as if she had consciously jumped into the pit that the man had dug. However, the jealous man was finally appeased. The way the two of them treated the onlookers like air had deeply provoked the crowd. Zhou Mo was the first to flip the table and leave with Kitty Li in his arms. Right at this moment, a slender figure walked over from outside the treasure-gathering hall. Little Qinggu, I'm telling you, don't ever go in. Go in and be abused. When Zhou Mo saw the person coming, he immediately complained bitterly. Jun Qinggu glanced at Zhou Mo indifferently. She ignored him and walked straight into the inner courtyard. The minute Yiqing Luo saw Jun Qingwu, she happily went forward to welcome her. His gaze fell on her hand. Jun Qingwu was holding a letter. Letter? Your letter. Jun Qingwu handed the letter to her. Mine? Yiqing Luo was puzzled. Who would specially ask Jun Qingwu to send her a letter? Your old acquaintance. Jun Qingwu glanced at the letter. Her meaning was, look at it yourself. You'll know once you read it. Yiqing Luo opened the letter suspiciously. When she saw the name on the letter, her pupils suddenly shrank. Miaoji. It was a letter from Miaoji. The Miao tribe's holy maiden from the Miaogu clan was Miao Yi's aunt. At that time, Miaoji had ascended to the earth realm. Miao Yi had inherited the Miao tribe's holy maiden's position. She had not expected that Miaoji would actually write her a letter. After reading the contents of the letter, she put the letter down. Mo Yuing immediately asked, what did she say? Yiqing Luo was stunned. Mo Yuing had always been someone who didn't put anything to heart. But now she took the initiative to ask about Miaoji. Chapter 39-34. Zhan He, did something happen to him? Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly constricted. The goo poison in Long Yunzhan's body was still lingering in his body. At that time, he specially sent Miao Yi to the West Continent to help Long Yunzhan resolve the goo. However, Miao Yi could only temporarily suppress the goo poison in Long Yunzhan's body. Old Man Song had even mentioned before. The goo poison in Long Yunzhan's body was not a goo that could be cultivated in the Nirvana realm. This kind of goo worm could only be nurtured by someone with extraordinary strength. To completely cure the goo, he could only go to the upper realm and find someone who understood the art of witchcraft to cure Long Yunzhan. Miaoji had delivered the letter. It was regarding the poison in Long Yunzhan's body and the problem of meeting her tomorrow. However, after knowing that the letter was written by Miaoji, Mo Yuing actually took the initiative to ask a question. Yiqing Luo's first reaction was to think of Long Yunzhan. Mo Yuing blinked her empty eyes and shook her head stiffly. No. Yiqing Luo stared intently at Mo Yuing. That expressionless, soulless face was devoid of any other emotions. After a while, Yiqing Luo's expression loosened up. Let's go see Miaoji together tomorrow. Mo Yuing wasn't someone who would lie. She said she was fine. At least before she came to the Earth domain, Long Yunzhan's poison did not flare up again. Mo Yuing nodded vigorously. Yiqing Luo had just kept the letter. He wanted to hug Jun Qingwu and thank her. The arms did not have time to open. Her feet suddenly left the ground. Her whole body fell into a broad embrace. Above her head, a man's low and husky voice floated down. Yet, there was a hint of coldness in it. Lil Luo just woke up not too long ago. She still needs more rest. I'll take her away first. Everyone widened their eyes, wanting to stop him. What did he mean by needing more rest? Obviously, Yiqing Luo had just woken up not long ago. I didn't talk to them for long, okay? However, no one dared to say such words. He could only watch helplessly as Dmo Xian brought Yiqing Luo away in an extremely overbearing manner. Yiqing Luo wrapped her arms around Dmo Xian's neck and felt the cool breeze brushing past her cheeks. But soon, she was tightly wrapped in the man's arms. Warmth engulfed her. Yiqing Luo realized something. Her little head curled up in his arms. As soon as he arrived, he entered his room. Yi Qingluo's back fell onto the soft bedding. The man's warm air pressure hit her face. Yi Qingluo hurriedly stretched out her hand and blocked Di Emotien's chest. As soon as he raised his head, he was met with a pair of obsidian eyes that were deep and filled with emotion. Her heart skipped a beat. Her cheeks were also flushed red. "Didn't you say that I just woke up and need more rest? What are you doing?" Yi Qingluo raised her brows. Her fingers caressed the man's brows and gently traced. Di Emotien narrowed his eyes as he glanced at the fingers that were moving around on his face. His lips curled up devilishly. "You're still more adorable when you're lying down." Yi Qingluo. These words, why did it sound so horrifying? Don't make it sound like I'm a necrophiliac, okay? There was something wrong with this scene. Di Emotien gave a low chuckle, but there wasn't any mirth in his eyes. "You who is lying down, there's only me by your side." His voice was very deep. It was so deep that it made one's heart felt constricted. Yi Qingluo was just about to say something. Chapter 39-35. I don't want to appear so petty. He buried his head in between her neck as his voice was very low and a little fuzzy, but she could hear the gloominess in his tone. "Lil Luo, do you feel that my possessiveness is very scary?" His voice turned deeper and deeper. "I obviously know that there's nothing going on between you and him, but seeing the way he looks at you, the attitude he has towards you, I just want to hold you in my arms, just want you to belong to me alone." The man's voice, word by word, was clearly transmitted into Yi Qingluo's ears. Yi Qingluo's pupils suddenly constricted as her eyelashes started to tremble. She stretched out her hands and hooked onto Di Emotien's neck, hugging him back. I know how you feel." She hugged the man tightly as her eyes turned slightly red. "A long time ago I said, I don't hate your possessiveness. You want to own me, because you care about me, That's why you want me to belong to you alone." How would she not know? Her Axian had taken care of her feelings. How much pain had he suffered? How many times had she relied on Axian's pampering to do things that made Axian worried? Yi Qingluo cupped his face as a light kiss fell on his face. "This kind of possessiveness, I don't find it scary at all, because I feel the same." Finally, her kiss fell on Di Emotien's lips. Like a dragonfly touching the water, it moved away. Her hands cupped his face, pressing her forehead against his. "Axian, our feelings are the same." Because they loved each other, so they cared, so they wanted to own him. Yi Qingluo buried her head in his chest again as she whispered softly, telling Di Emotien everything that she had said to Chu Wu Xian earlier. Finally, she raised her little head, her chin resting on his chest as she gazed at his clean chin. "Say, what did he mean by be careful of the people around you? To sow discord?" His hand brushed Yi Qingluo's fine hair as Di Emotien answered lazily. Yi Qingluo used her head to knock him. "We're talking about serious matters, be more serious." Di Emotien's voice became even fainter, with a trace of indifference. "I'm very serious." Although that was the case. But the man's hand had already landed on her waist. His body turned slightly cold. Her robe was scattered on the side of the bed. Yi Qingluo was so angry that she laughed. Her little hand stopped the man. "What kind of decency is this?" Loosening his robe halfway, Di Emotien propped himself up and his good-looking face was imprinted right in front of her eyes. "Why don't you tell me? How did I become indecent?" "Yi Qingluo, why don't you tell me what you're doing now is considered decent?" Could he move away from her and say those words with a straight face? "Do you have any sense of shame? Lying through your teeth, doesn't your conscience hurt?" Di Emotien expressed, "For the woman I love, what is face? What's the use of it? If he came, could he sleep with little Luo? To be able to sleep with Lil Luo, one's conscience would only feel better." Yi Qingluo. She only wanted to understand from Di Emotien's mouth what the people around Zhu Wu Xian meant by that. Couldn't they discuss the problem first before doing anything else? No matter how Yi Qingluo's inner heart rejected, or how her actions resisted. Finally, when the man's kiss landed. Chapter 39-36. By the time Yiqing Luo woke up, it was already the next morning. The man beside her had long disappeared. Yiqing Luo climbed up from the bed. Her entire body was sore and limp, almost unable to straighten her back. She simply didn't dare to recall the scene of being indecent treated by the man yesterday. That scene was too terrifying. Just recalling it made her legs wobbly. At this moment, she only wanted to use 2 words to describe her feelings. Beast. Wasn't he a beast? The man last night was like a beast who had been trapped for a long time, using all kinds of ways to torment her. He even forced her to stay awake. To put it nicely, she had said it herself. Since she had flirted with someone, she should be responsible. So she had to set an example. After that, he was unbridled, tormenting her. After that, he said that he was magnanimous to let her and Chuwu Xian chat alone. So he must be rewarded. Hence tormenting again. After that. There was no more after that. She opened her eyes. Her entire body was about to fall apart. Her 4 limbs were almost not her own. Yiqing Luo cried out and pounced onto the blanket, not wanting to move at all. But time waited for no one. She still had to attend Miaoji's appointment today. After struggling for some time, Yiqing Luo scolded Dmo Xian in her heart as she got up from the bed. When she stepped on the ground, Yiqing Luo felt as though she was stepping on cotton, soft and fluffy. But although her body was sore, she felt refreshed and that place was cool, without the pain she had imagined. At least that man still had some conscience. He knew that after tormenting her, he would serve her well. Yiqing Luo snorted. The grievance in her heart had lessened by quite a bit. She hung Dmo Xian specially on the wooden frame with difficulty, and let her put on the red robe neatly and washed up. She was finally able to walk normally and do other actions. Yiqing Luo stretched her waist and stretched her muscles before walking out of the room. When she walked out of the courtyard, Yiqing Luo saw Mo Yuing and Xiao Yinyan sitting opposite each other on the stone bench. Old Lai was lying sloppily on the rockery with a blade of grass in his mouth. Gui Wu, Zhou Mo and Kitty Li were nowhere to be seen. When Yiqing Luo saw the 2 of them sitting opposite each other, she was rather astonished. He was very curious. The 2 of them could actually sit face to face peacefully, and the atmosphere wasn't that tense. Not easy at all. Mo Yuing sensed Yiqing Luo's gaze and immediately stood up, walking towards Yiqing Luo. Qing Luo. Her pink body was petite and cute. When he pounced into Yiqing Luo's arms, Yiqing Luo withdrew her arms and gave him a full hug. During this period of time, Yiqing Luo felt a gaze which was as sharp as a blade in front of her. She frowned and looked over. She met Xiao Yinyan's gaze. Xiao Yinyan didn't avoid her gaze. He just stared at her. The hand that was holding Mo Yuying's hand. TSK. That gaze was a little too much. Before Mo Yuing appeared, Xiao Yinyan was gentle and polite to her. Many people even misunderstood that he liked her. Now Mo Yuing had appeared. She, the stepping stone, was kicked to the side. Now that she was hugging Mo Yuing, she was being hated by him? Yiqing Luo retracted her gaze and hugged Mo Yuing even more fiercely. Let's go, Shadow. Let's go see Miaoji. Mo Yuing nodded her head vigorously. Waiting here early in the morning was to wait for Yiqing Luo to meet Miaoji together. The goo poison in Long Yunzhan's body was not cured. Chapter 39-37. Yiqing Luo hugged Mo Yuing as she walked towards the entrance of the courtyard. Xiao Yinyan immediately stood up and followed behind. Yiqing Luo halted her footsteps as she turned her head sideways and looked at Xiao Yinyan as her slender brows rose slightly. You intend to keep following us? Amen. Xiao Yinyan replied straightforwardly. His deep black eyes stared at Mo Yuing without blinking. His silver hair contrasted with his black eyes, making his pupils look even darker. So you're saying, you're already certain that she is the person you're looking for? Yiqing Luo turned around and met his gaze. Those deep eyes seemed to be able to see through everything about him. His tone was unprecedentedly serious. To Yi Qing Luo. Everyone in Devil class were her brothers who had gone through life and death together. Even if Mo Yuing was older than her. But in her heart, she had always treated Mo Yuing as her own sister to love. If Qiao Yinyan was sincere in wanting to resolve the misunderstanding with Mo Yuing and get together again, Yi Qing Luo was naturally willing. The days they had spent together, Yi Qing Luo was certain that Qiao Yinyan's character was indeed not bad. Moreover, his feelings towards Mo Yuing were very sincere. But the prerequisite was that he could really resolve the misunderstanding between him and Mo Yuing, and not with other cliché motives. Qiao Yinyan's gaze didn't even blink, but his gaze became much gentler. Right. One word, clean and crisp, which also explained his attitude. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows as she hugged Mo Yuing, and turned around as she walked out of the courtyard's main entrance. Her voice was slightly indifferent and calm, but her tone was filled with unquestionable might. Then remember what you said today. Qiao Yinyan didn't reply as he followed behind her slowly. Old Lai leapt down from the rockery as he pounced over. There's such a lively place, how can you not bring me along? Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes at the old man who came up to her. After wandering for so long, you're not intending to return to Hell Palace? She realized. Why was there always a bunch of old urchins surrounding her? After Gui Yu left, a god thief came. Now there was another old Lai. Previously, they were still in a life and death situation with Hell Palace. Now, Hell Palace had become her acting cool backing. This world was really too complicated. Yi Qing Luo was unable to keep up with this pace. Why would I want to go back to the underworld palace? It's so boring. There are so many interesting things to do with you. I don't want to go back. Lao Lai shook his head decisively. He looked as if he would risk his life to follow her. You can follow me, but don't create any trouble. Yi Qing Luo couldn't be bothered to persuade old Lai. With old Lai following him, many things would indeed be more convenient. At the very least, those who wanted to curry favor with him. They were afraid of old Lai, so they did not dare to rush forward and surround her. In a relatively remote inn, Yi Qing Luo's group had just arrived when a waiter went up to welcome them, leading them to the most corner of the private room. Yi Qing Luo had just walked in when she saw Miaoji standing by the window, deep in thought. Miaoji, who had not been seen for a long time, was no longer wearing the complicated and intricate clothing she wore when she was in the Miao tribe. Instead, she was wearing a long green robe. Her black hair was tied up with a wooden hairpin. It made her look as gentle as water. Even the dignified and noble aura she exuded when she was at the Miaogu clan had become extremely gentle. Yi Qing Luo didn't recognize the person in front of her for a moment. It was Miaoji who heard the door opening as she regained her senses from her deep thoughts. She gave a gentle smile towards Yi Qing Luo. Qing Luo, long time no see. Chapter 39-38. Miaoji smiled gently. Why? Didn't you come specially for my appointment? Why are you so surprised to see me? Yi Qing Luo pulled out a chair and sat down as she sized Miaoji up. I am indeed surprised. I haven't seen you for such a long time and you seem to have changed into another person. I thought I had recognized the wrong person. People have no choice but to wear a mask under certain circumstances. Miaoji picked up the teapot and poured a cup of tea for everyone. My task is completed, so I can naturally remove the mask. Previously, Miaoji, as an outsider, was taken over by the previous Miao tribe's holy maiden, and became the Miao tribe's holy maiden. Only she knew how much pressure she had to bear. So she had no choice but to toughen herself up. Dignified, indestructible. Only by making herself stronger. Only by making herself stronger could she deter those who had ill intentions. Now she had already retreated unscathed to the heaven realm, and was living a carefree life. Naturally, there was no need to put on that mask. The few behind her all sat down. Mo Yuing couldn't wait to ask, Aunt Miao, you said you already have a way to cure class monitor's goo, right? Her speech was much faster than usual, even though her tone was still as calm as before. But she could feel the fear and uneasiness in her heart. Hearing this voice, Miaoji frowned slightly as she looked at Mo Yuing. When she met Mo Yuying's eyes, her pupils suddenly shrank. Even his face had turned a few shades paler. What's the matter? Yi Qingluo noticed the change in Miao Ji's expression. Miao Ji stretched out her hand and held Mo Yuying's wrist. Mo Yuying was stunned as she blinked her eyes, seemingly puzzled. But Qiao Yinyan, who was by her side, moved his palm and quickly slapped down towards Miao Ji's hand. Miao Ji held Mo Yuying's hand and dodged to the side. That palm landed on the table. The teacups collided and the tea spilled out. Qiao Yinyan's eyes sunk as he raised his palm to stop Miao Ji. Yi Qingluo couldn't stand it anymore as her fingertips moved and the glower flame fan opened up and slid into Qiao Yinyan's palm. Qiao Yinyan, if you continue to make trouble, I will ask my shadow to get you out. Qiao Yinyan's hand froze as he frowned and looked at Yi Qingluo. At this time, Mo Yuying cooperatively looked up at him and nodded. Yes, get out. Qiao Yinyan was speechless. Qiao Yinyan fell silent. But his line of sight was fixed on Miao Ji's hand that was holding Mo Yuying's. He was not familiar with Miao Ji. However, when she saw Miao Ji suddenly grabbing onto Mo Yuying, her actions were quick, and she wanted to protect Mo Yuying. However, Miao Ji only pressed on Mo Yuying's pulse. After a few breaths, her brows furrowed even tighter. How long has your condition been like this? What? Mo Yuying raised her head. Her beautiful face was expressionless. Yi Qingluo understood the meaning behind her words as her expression sunk. You're asking her kind. Like a soulless state? Yes, Miao Ji said. Yi Qingluo pursed her lips slightly. Ever since I knew her, she has always been like this. But this young Master Qiao was rumored to be acquainted with the shadow. The shadow in the past was not like this. Pausing slightly, Yi Qingluo's pupils suddenly widened. What you mean is, shadow was poisoned by a venomous worm? She became like this because of the goo worm. Yi Qingluo's words came out. Qiao Yinyan and Mo Yuying both looked at her. Then they looked at Miao Ji in unison. Poisoned by a venomous worm? Chapter 39-39. Miao Ji, who was being stared at by several pairs of eyes, quickly let go of Mo Yuying's wrist and shook her head. Her condition doesn't seem like she was poisoned. Yi Qingluo heaved a sigh of relief. You made the atmosphere so serious if it's not. But, before she could catch her breath, Miao Ji changed the topic again. The expression on her face was serious and serious. Her condition may be more troublesome than being poisoned. Troublesome? What do you mean? Do you know why she became like this? Qiao Yinyan was the most agitated as he stood up and stared at Miao Ji. Yi Qingluo glanced at Qiao Yinyan and raised her hand to block in front of him. He lowered his eyes and looked at Yi Qingluo's wrist. His cold expression became even colder. Even his gaze towards Yi Qingluo had turned colder by a few notches. But Yi Qingluo's hand still didn't move. Both sides fought for a moment. Qiao Yinyan gritted his teeth and clenched his fists as he sat down. But the pressure around him was so low that the surrounding air was slightly condensed. Aunt Miao, you don't have to care about him. Yi Qingluo held Mo Yuying's hand and looked at Miao Ji seriously. You said, the shadow is more troublesome than being poisoned. What's going on? If she is poisoned, I can still help and find those seniors to research. But her condition doesn't seem to be poisoned, but more like being possessed. Possessed? Yi Qingluo was stunned. Did she hear it wrongly? Possessed? Her first reaction was being possessed by a ghost. But this was obviously impossible. It wasn't that there were no ghosts in this strange world. To be more precise, the so-called ghosts were all spiritual bodies. For example, the old man Song in her azure dew bracelet was also considered a type of ghost. As for profound practitioners like them, they were able to interact with spirits, so how could they be bewitched? I'm not talking about being harassed by other spiritual bodies or anything else. Miao Ji stared at Mo Yuying for a while. I'm not too sure. But her condition seems like she has lost her soul. 3 souls and 6 spirits? If a person lost their soul, wouldn't they be a corpse? Although Mo Yuying looked like a puppet without a soul. There's no soul light in her eyes, and even her pulse is so weak that it's hard to detect. This was also the first time Miao Ji had encountered such a situation. My goo worm cannot sense her soul power. Yi Qingluo pursed her lips tightly as she glanced sideways at the girl beside her. He couldn't believe it. This girl who would call her Qingluo, who would fight for her favor, and even requested for kisses and hugs. It would be a puppet without a soul. Then is there any way to retrieve her soul? Xiao Yinyan, who was ordered to sit by the side by Yi Qingluo, opened his mouth hoarsely. His tone was filled with suppressed pain. Ever since he knew that Mo Yuying's memory was a mess and she had completely forgotten about him. Xiao Yinyan's heart had always been in a mess. Now he finally got his answer. Mo Yuying didn't forget about him. Instead, he had lost his soul and all his memories. As long as he could find Mo Yuying's soul, Mo Yuying would definitely remember him. Miaoji sighed. I'm not sure. Yi Qingluo swallowed the words that were in her mouth. She was clear that Miaoji only specialized in goo poison. The reason why she could tell that Mo Yuying had lost her soul. Chapter 3940. Mo Yuying's soul. Perhaps only by going to the Godless Island would he be able to get the answer. Yi Qingluo had an intuition. Mo Yuying becoming like this was definitely related to Godless Island. There was definitely something wrong with the so-called island owner of Godless Island. A way to search for souls. Old Lai, who had been leaning on the chair and playing with the teacup in boredom, suddenly spoke. He put down the teacup and looked at Yi Qingluo smilingly. I do. He smiled. The frightening scar on his face was even more shocking. The flesh that was sent flying was still moving. Yi Qingluo's expression didn't change at all. Speak. Old Lai leaned over and looked as if he was presenting a treasure. There's nothing our underworld palace can't do. I can tell you the method to search for souls. However, this information can be considered as the underworld palace repaying the debt they owed you. As he spoke, he rubbed his hands together. How is it? Then let's see if your idea is reliable or not. Yi Qingluo rubbed her chin. Lao Lai proudly raised his chin and said, how can my method be unreliable? How can someone from my hell sect be unreliable? As he spoke, he lowered his voice again. Finding a soul can actually be said to be difficult. Have you heard of the ocean water divine armament? Vast water divine weapon? Yi Qingluo's brows twitched. Before he could say anything, Xiao Yinyan asked anxiously, you're talking about the azure water divine artifact that was sealed by the divine emperor before he passed away? It's rumored that there are 5 vast water divine weapons? Old Lai nodded. It's that vast water divine weapon. As long as he gathered all 5 divine artifacts, he would be able to call the wind and summon the rain, summoning the gods and ghosts. Not to mention finding the 3 souls and 7 spirits. But according to the rumors of my Qiao family's ancestors, if we gather all 5 vast water divine artifacts and offer the blood of the descendant of the divine emperor as a sacrifice to the heavens, we can open the seal to the divine emperor's tomb. Xiao Yinyan said doubtfully. That's right. That's why I said that he could even undo the seal on the tomb of the god emperor. Isn't it a piece of cake to help that girl find her soul? Lao Lai said with a very reasonable look. Xiao Yinyan's frown deepened. Mo Yuying raised her head. Her expressionless face did not have the slightest fluctuation of emotions. That pair of empty and soulless eyes blinked. Then he said, it's too dangerous to gather all 5 azure water divine weapons. If someone really opens the tomb of the god emperor, the consequences will be unthinkable. She paused for a moment and held Yi Qingluo's hand. I'm all right, I'm already used to it. I don't remember the people in the past, but to be able to remember you. To remember everyone in Devil class, that's enough. Yi Qingluo met with Mo Yuying's empty eyes. Hearing her saying that everything was for their sake, she couldn't help but hugged her into her arms. She was just about to speak. His voice was cut off again. Xiao Yinyan's voice was anxious, uneasy, and fearful. This won't do, that won't do. What should he do? In the past, she was clearly so lively and beautiful. Now is it really fair for her? Calm down. Miaoji comforted. The vast water divine relic was a divine relic used by the divine sovereign when he was still alive. Even if we wanted to find a divine relic, it wouldn't be that easy. What's more, even if we found the divine relic, other than the overlord, No one else is able to use the power of the divine relic. Xiao Yinyan's trembling body slowly stabilized. His eyes stared deadly at Mo Yuying. The expression on his face was filled with pain. Chapter 39-41. Everyone finally quietened down and fixed their eyes on her. Yiqing Luo touched Mo Yuying's head, looked at her and asked seriously, "You only need to answer me, do you want to become a normal person?" Mo Yuying's fingers that were intertwined with hers suddenly tightened. Her eyelashes fluttered. This reaction had already indicated her answer. Yiqing Luo brushed the hair on her forehead and gently stroked it. "In front of me, there's no need to suppress your own thoughts." Mo Yuying's lifeless eyes faintly flashed a glimmer of light. After some time, she finally nodded her head under Yiqing Luo's gaze. She thought, how could he not think about it? Who would be willing to be a puppet without feelings and emotions? She knew her own situation very well. For a person like her, other than everyone in Devil class, no one would treat her as a real person. She would also hope for warmth. She wanted to be like a normal person, to have her own emotions and expressions. But the price of returning to normal was too great. She was afraid. Just thinking about it is enough. Yiqing Luo stopped Mo Yuying's thoughts as her lips curled up slightly. "Leave the matter regarding the Azure Water God relic to me." Qing Luo. Mo Yuying's lips moved, wanting to say something but hesitating. Yiqing Luo smiled, lowered her head and leaned close to her ear. "Don't feel guilty. It's not only because of you. My original intention was to gather all the Zongshui artifacts." Mo Yuying still wanted to say something. Yiqing Luo had already patted her head as she widened the distance between them. To prevent Mo Yuying from blaming herself for the Zongshui artifact again, Yiqing Luo changed the topic. "Aunt Miao, let's not talk about this matter for now. Yesterday you wrote in the letter that you already have a way to cure Ajan's goo. Is that true?" Long Yunjian was mentioned. Mo Yuying's attention was indeed diverted. Miao Jiwei was stunned for a moment before remembering her purpose of coming here today. "To be honest, I'm not too sure myself." Yiqing Luo wasn't disappointed. The poison that was placed on Long Yunjian's body was a poison from the upper realm. Naturally, it wasn't that easy to solve. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, it was better than having no hope at all. "So that means that you already know. Just what is the goo poison in Ajan's body?" she asked. Miaoji nodded with a serious expression. "Based on what Yi told me, the goo poison in Sir Long's body should be the most powerful goo poison in the heaven realm, the heart-devouring goo. Witchcraft family? The best of witchcraft? Heart-devouring insect." Listening to these heavy blows falling one after another, Yiqing Luo was extremely shocked. She had heard about this witchcraft family from Old Man Song. This witchcraft, compared to the Miaogu clan, it was of an unknown number of times higher level. They could be considered as the largest venomous insect clan in the upper realm. He was also in existence that many large forces were unwilling to provoke. Not wanting to provoke them and not wanting to provoke the Underworld Palace were two completely different concepts. The people from the Underworld Palace were a bunch of lunatics. They were clearly fighting head-on and causing a ruckus. If they provoked the Miaogu aristocrat clan, he might just die for no reason. He didn't even know how he died. It was very strange. Heart-devouring goo. That is an extremely precious kind of goo. It can be said that in the entire witchcraft family, there are less than 10 of them. Those are all peerless grade goo worms which had been nurtured for 100 years. When Miaoji said this, her tone was filled with admiration. Chapter 39-42. Listening to Miaoji's explanation, Yiqing Luo was shocked. 100 years of nurturing witchcraft's best, peerless worm, was planted on Long Yunjian, witchcraft aristocratic family. Or who had such deep hatred towards Long Yunjian. No matter if it was the witchcraft aristocratic family, or someone else. The person who planted the worm on Long Yunjian was absolutely not a small character. The entire witchcraft aristocratic family had less than 10 heart-devouring worms, and it was planted on a young man with amnesia. Wait, amnesia. Yi Qingluo's pupils contracted. Long Yunzhan's amnesia. Could it be related to this heart-devouring worm? Human Dragon Clan. Long Yunzhan. And the witchcraft aristocratic family. Looked like it involved a lot of people. Yi Qingluo squinted her eyes slightly as a glint flashed past her eyes. Qingluo, I specially asked you out today to tell you that this heart-devouring worm has no cure. Miaoji looked at Yi Qingluo's expression and couldn't bear it, but she had to make things clear. Yi Qingluo was stunned as she suddenly raised her head. Didn't you say you have a way? The only way I can think of is. Miaoji paused, took a deep breath and said word by word. While the heart-devouring worm hasn't acted up, kill the person who is poisoned. Impossible. Yi Qingluo rejected without thinking. Kill Long Yunzhan? How could that be possible? If Long Yunzhan was really poisoned, and wanted to kill him to free him. Earlier when Long Yunzhan's poison acted up and hurt Yin Xiaoyi, she would have already taken action. Long Yunzhan was her brother. Her companion. No matter what, she would never give up on anyone. Other than this, there's no other way. Miaoji sighed. I know to you this is a very painful thing, but actually he is feeling more pain than you. Miaoji looked at the young lady whose petite body started to tremble, as her voice became gentler. I know how you feel. If it wasn't for the fact that I can't think of any other way, I would definitely not suggest this to you. She stretched out her hand and placed it on the young lady's clenched fist. The terror of the heart-devouring parasite lies in its ability to slowly devour a person's heart, soul, consciousness, and everything that belongs to the victim. In the end, not even bones will be left of the victim. Most importantly, the heart-devouring parasite will also control the consciousness of the victim, making the victim do something that they will regret for the rest of their life while they are awake. She tightened her grip and said, when the parasite took effect, the pain and torment your brother suffered was worse than death. When he heard the name of this goo worm, Yi Qingluo could roughly guess the insidiousness of this goo worm. He just didn't expect it to be so insidious. Qingluo. Mo Yuying's hand grabbed onto Yi Qingluo's arm as her little body trembled in shock. She opened her empty eyes as she stared at Yi Qingluo without blinking. Even if there were no emotions, Yi Qingluo could sense the fear and helplessness in Mo Yuying's heart. Yi Qingluo tried her best to calm herself down as she raised her hand and rubbed her furry little head. Since we know that Zhan is afflicted with the heart-devouring parasite, then we will definitely be able to find a way to cure Zhan. Mo Yuying's stiff face started to show some signs of change. Then she nodded her head vigorously. Both her hands grabbed tightly onto Yi Qingluo's arm. Sigh. Miaoji sighed helplessly. I knew you would say that. Chapter 3943. Miaoji let go of her hand. I will continue to think of a way, you should consider it well. Regarding Yi Qingluo's choice. When Miaoji mentioned it, she had already thought of this outcome. But even if she knew, she still had to say out this cruel method because she was responsible for Yi Qingluo. But the final decision was still up to them. She found out that Mo Yuying had lost her soul. She found out about the terror of the heart-devouring parasite, and the incurable parasite. Yi Qingluo's mood was extremely heavy. Miaoji let out a long sigh and gave her a few more reminders before she left. Before she left, she specially handed Mo Yuying a letter for her to pass to Miao Yi. After Miaoji left, the few people in the private room had different emotions. Yi Qingluo and Mo Yuying's minds were filled with Long Yunzhan and the heart-devouring parasite. As for Qiao Yinyan, his mind was filled with searching for Mo Yuying's lost soul and awakening her memory. His expression was complicated as he stared at Mo Yuying in pain. Only Old Lai didn't seem to feel the gloomy atmosphere at all. After Miaoji left, he went up to Yi Qingluo and his eyes lit up. Madam D, you said I will pass the Azure Water Divine Relic to you. Does that mean you intend to collect all 5 pieces of Azure Water Divine Relic? Saying that, he gave a sneaky smile. If I remember correctly, Madam D seems to have the Azure Water Divine Relic on you. When you collect all the Azure Water Divine Relic, can you bring me along? Let me have a look at the legendary azure water divine relic. Old Lai rubbed his hands as he spoke. That terrifying scar on his face was trembling so much that the red flesh was flying. The more he smiled, the more ferocious he looked. Yi Qing Luo didn't want to bother about him. Old Lai went nearer instead. His nagging was like a fly buzzing around her ear. Xiao Yinyan couldn't take it anymore as he pressed his palm on Old Lai's head. Old Lai fell onto the ground. He fell flat on his face. Can't you see that we are in trouble? Xiao Yinyan was irritated and his expression was dark. Old Lai rubbed his face as he got up from the ground. Didn't I give you an idea? Xiao Yinyan didn't even look at Lao Lai. He suddenly reached out and grabbed Mo Yuying's wrist. You come out with me for a while. Mo Yuying didn't have time to react. Xiao Yinyan had already dragged her to the door. The room door closed and there was only Yi Qing Luo and Old Lai left in the room. Lao Lai obviously wanted to be mischievous again. But seeing Yi Qing Luo's gloomy expression, he rubbed his sore butt. Finally, he snorted loudly to show that he was angry. Then he jumped down from the window and flew away. Yi Qing Luo. Forget it. When Old Lai knows that no one is coaxing him, he will come back obediently. What are you doing? Mo Yuying's arm was in pain from his grip, but she didn't struggle. It was only when they reached a corner of the corridor that Xiao Yinyan stopped in his tracks. With one hand, he pulled the girl into his embrace. What's your relationship with that man called Ajan? He could tell. No matter if it was Yi Qing Luo or Mo Yuying, they both cared about that man. Yi Qing Luo obviously treated him as a brother. But Mo Yuying, the attention she paid to that man was obviously different. So much that she didn't even care about the fact that she didn't have 3 souls and 7 spirits. She only wanted to know how to cure that man's goo. She even frowned because of that man. Xiao Yinyan had been suppressing his emotions. Chapter 39-44. She was obviously so cold towards him. Even when she spoke, she would only reply after a long time. As though she didn't care about him at all. The reason why she cared about him was because he was Yi Qing Luo's friend. This feeling had been accumulating in the depths of Xiao Yinyan's heart. This time, after he felt that Mo Yuying had a different attitude towards another man, he completely exploded. Xiao Yinyan held on to her hand as he stared deadly at her. He wanted to transmit his inner feelings to her. But Mo Yuying was expressionless. There was no trace of emotion in her empty eyes. She didn't reply. Their eyes met. After some time, Xiao Yinyan felt a sense of defeat. He shut his eyes tightly and slowly released the hand which was holding Mo Yuying's hand. His shoulders drooped down powerlessly. His back was bent and he looked extremely dejected. He slowly took a few steps back and gazed deeply at Mo Yuying. Then he slowly turned around. His feet staggered and swayed. It was as if something heavy had completely crushed him. Mo Yuying's empty eyes suddenly blinked. She stared at Xiao Yinyan's back view. His extremely black eyes flashed with a hint of dark and gloomy light. She lifted up the wrist which was held by Xiao Yinyan. She lowered her eyes and stared at the place which was held by Xiao Yinyan. Then she slowly pressed her hand on her chest. Just now, when Xiao Yinyan let go of her hand, that place on her chest seemed to hurt a little. That prickling feeling disappeared in a flash. Was it painful? Does she also have the feeling of pain? Mo Yuying looked at the place where her palm was pressed and raised her head stiffly, looking at the man's staggering tall figure. Just now, the moment when he turned around to leave, her body actually had a reflexive desire to keep him. This was a strange and wonderful feeling. She had never felt this way before. Bam! Suddenly, there was a sound of a heavy object colliding in front. Mo Yuying looked over. In front, that man who couldn't even walk steadily crashed into the stone wall at the corner. He staggered and fell to the ground. As for him, he just sat on the ground. He had no intention of getting up at all. Mo Yuying subconsciously walked towards that person and squatted beside him. You can't move? Why are you sitting on the ground? Hearing this emotionless, machine-like voice, Luo Bingyun's heart skipped a beat. The man with the dog on his back suddenly turned his head and looked at her happily. Are you concerned about me? He grabbed her wrists with both hands. Her face was reflected in his eyes. Mo Ying looked at her hands that were being grabbed and blinked her eyes. She stared at him and said, "This is outside and you are the young master of the Qiao family. Don't let others see you being rude." Xiao Yinyan's eyes were full of smiles. With Mo Ying's support, he stood up. His gaze had been fixed on her from the beginning to the end. It was as if he wanted to absorb everything about her into the deepest part of his heart. Mo Ying felt a little uncomfortable under his gaze. Just as he was about to say something, her wrist suddenly tightened. Her petite body was tightly held in Xiao Yinyan's arms. Mo Ying was a little stiff, but she didn't struggle. Chapter 39:45. Mo Ying's body stiffened and she felt very uncomfortable. But he had to admit it. Xiao Yinyan held her in his arms. She could feel the warmth from Xiao Yinyan's body. She was not disgusted. He had no intention of resisting. On the contrary, something seemed to fill her heart. Mo Ying didn't know what this feeling was, nor could she describe it. I won't ask anymore. I won't ask any questions that you don't want to answer." Xiao Yinyan tightened his grip on her, as if he was afraid that the person in front of him would disappear. That fearful and cautious look on her face. Mo Ying blinked her empty eyes again. Soon after, she slowly raised her hands and imitated the way he hugged her, hugging his back. Xiao Yinyan's body stiffened. His muscles were all tensed up. Mo Ying didn't notice the change in the man as she followed her first instinct and said word by word, "The agent that Qing Luo mentioned is my class monitor. He is slowly." She told him about her relationship with Long Yunjian. This was probably the most she had ever spoken in her memory. However, after the explanation, Xiao Yinyan's mood had obviously improved a lot. She did not continue to dwell on the matter of how much she had said. The next day, Mo Ying then raised the matter of returning to Nirvana realm to Yi Qing Luo. She came to the Earth domain originally to help Yi Qing Luo. Now he had finished helping her. He also obtained information about the goo worms in Long Yunjian's body. Furthermore, she had been in the Earth domain for a long time. If he didn't go back, the brothers of the World Mercenary Group were all worried to death. She still had to tell her brothers about the heart-devouring goo. Yi Qing Luo didn't stop her. After all, Mo Ying had been in the Earth realm for a very long time. However, she readily agreed. Someone immediately protested. Xiao Yinyan grabbed Mo Ying's wrist and stood up. "I don't agree." He then turned to look at Mo Ying. I won't allow you to leave the Earth domain." Mo Ying tilted her head and looked at him expressionlessly. "I want to go back." "No." Xiao Yin pursed his lips into a straight line. It wasn't easy for him to meet Mo Ying again, even if they hadn't solved the misunderstanding. But we met again. He didn't want to let her out of his sight again. He had already let go once. He didn't want to let go a second time. Mo Ying was a little unhappy and struggled to shake off his hand. "Xiao Yinyan." Xiao Yinyan refused to let go. The two of them went back and forth. Yi Qing Luo's teeth were about to ache from watching. "Xiao Yinyan, if you don't want to leave the shadow, why don't you just follow it to the Nirvana realm?" She rolled her eyes. Xiao Yinyan frowned. He was the eldest young master of the Qiao family. How could he leave so easily? That's where Shadow has been living ever since he lost his memories of you and me. Don't you want to take a look? Don't you want to get to know Shadow's brothers and sisters? You don't want the people Shadow cares about to acknowledge your existence? Yi Qing Luo didn't even bother to pant as she continuously sent out soul interrogations. "Xiao Yinyan." He looked at Yi Qing Luo as his handsome face trembled slightly, vaguely distorted. In the end, it turned into two words. "I will go." Yi Qing Luo smiled satisfactorily. "This is the attitude of chasing after my shadow. Then it's decided happily." The decision was made. Chapter 39:46. Mo Ying kept staring at Xiao Yinyan's departing figure, not making a single sound. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she gave a teasing smile. "Why? Shadow isn't willing to let him go to Nirvana realm with you?" Hearing her voice, Mo Ying's stiff head turned over as her empty gaze met Yi Qingluo's. Following that, she thought seriously for a moment and shook her head. It's not that I'm not willing. That means I'm willing. Yi Qingluo's smile became even more evil. Mo Ying blinked as her expressionless face creased. It's his freedom to go wherever he wants to go. So even if he wants to go to Nirvana Realm, it doesn't have much to do with me. This honest words made Yi Qingluo cough dryly. Luckily Qiao Yinyan had returned to the Qiao residence. Otherwise, hearing this, wouldn't her heart be pierced to death? It looked like Qiao Yinyan's journey to chase after his wife was still far away. She had already hinted so clearly, but Mo Ying had no reaction at all. She could only silently cheer for Qiao Yinyan in her heart. Qingluo. Suddenly, Mo Ying's voice sounded a little hesitant as she called out Yi Qingluo's name. Waiting for Yi Qingluo's gaze to look over. Her two little hands were pinched together. Since yesterday, I've been wanting to ask you a question. Yi Qingluo replied. What you want to ask is regarding the heart-devouring parasite. Should I tell Ajan? Mo Ying nodded. Of course he has the right to know his own situation. Yi Qingluo had no intention to hide. Say whatever you want to say. In the end, it still depends on Ajan's own choice. Mo Ying's adorable lips moved as though she wanted to say something, but eventually she kept her words back. I know what you're worried about. Yi Qingluo pinched Mo Ying's face as she explained with a light smile. I also know that based on Ajan's character, he will definitely choose to kill him now, in case the heart-devouring parasite acts up in future and hurt his brothers. If it was anyone from the World Mercenary Group, they would probably choose this way. They would rather sacrifice themselves and not bear to let any of their brothers get hurt. Yi Qingluo's eyes lifted up slightly as her gaze looked towards the horizon, as though she could see those brothers in the world group through the sky. There was a gentle and peaceful smile on his face. After telling him everything, you just need to tell him one thing for me. If he believes me, then he should live on. Mo Ying's eyelashes trembled and her empty eyes blinked. An indescribable emotion spread in his heart. It seemed like, ever since they arrived in the land, she could sense more and more emotions. It was as if she was becoming more and more like a person. After a while, she nodded vigorously. Yes. Right there, the world group had always believed in Qingluo. Qingluo would definitely bring them a miracle. Therefore, the class monitor would be fine. The heart-devouring parasite could definitely be removed. At noon, the group ate a meal together. Mo Ying brought Qiao Yinyan to the Nirvana realm. Before leaving, Patriarch Qiao even sent him off. He looked at Mo Ying with sparkling eyes. Although Mo Ying didn't have a soul or emotions, her body instinctively understood some of the ways of the world. Looking at the passionate Patriarch Qiao, her face stiffened as she said word by word. Patriarch Qiao, I will get Qiao Yinyan back as soon as possible. Patriarch Qiao replied, No need, no need. You can use this lad for as long as you want. Just take him, it's fine even if you don't want to bring him back. Chapter 3947. Qiao Yinyan. The onlookers. Yi Qingluo's lips twitched. No wonder Qiao Yinyan was able to obtain Patriarch Qiao's permission so easily. Generally speaking, large forces and clans would not allow their eldest son to wander around the lower realms. To them, this was beneath their dignity. Furthermore, it was extremely risky for people from the Earth domain to head to the Nirvana realm. If the Historian of Balance and the others found out, it would be very difficult to deal with them. But Patriarch Qiao didn't even hesitate before he agreed to it. How afraid was Patriarch Qiao that his son couldn't find a wife? Previously, when he saw her, his eyes also lit up. Now that he saw Mo Ying, his eyes lit up. Could it be that to Patriarch Qiao, it was fine as long as it was a woman? After sending Mo Ying and Qiao Yinyan off with her eyes, Yi Qingluo turned back and hugged Kitty Li, rubbing her furry little head as she wailed. Speaking of this, we really haven't seen our brothers in the world group for a long time. I really miss them. Yeso. When will they be able to reach the Earth realm together? Kitty Li hugged Yi Qingluo back. A cold gaze was fixed on the two of them. Yi Qing Luo directly ignored it as she hugged the soft kitten, comforting Shadow's reluctant heart as she sent him off. Very soon, especially after Shadow returns. They will definitely work harder to improve themselves, then come back to the Earth boundary to look for us. Their 3-month appointment was about to arrive. I hope when we meet again. They had all undergone earth-shattering changes. The two of them were talking to each other. The owner of the cold gaze finally couldn't take it anymore. He directly grabbed Kitty Lee and pulled her into his arms. With an unfriendly expression, he said, "Woman, if you feel lonely, go to your sovereign. Don't touch my little wild cat." Zhou Mo grumbled and hugged Kitty Lee tightly. It was as if Kitty Lee was his possession. What frustrated Zhou Mo the most was, when he hugged Kitty Lee's face was full of unwillingness, and she even made threatening gestures. When it reached Yi Qing Luo's arms, that adorable little kitten appearance, it even took the initiative to return the hug. The more he looked, the angrier he felt. How women! She already had her own man, yet she still came to snatch his woman. Zhou Mo's vengeful gaze made Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but roll her eyes. What was the point of glaring at his own woman if he couldn't coax her? Zhou Mo hugged the struggling Kitty Lee tightly, until Kitty Lee stopped struggling. Zhou Mo's expression eased up a little, but the expression he shot at Yi Qing Luo was still rather unfriendly. Speaking of which, where did your man go? I haven't seen him for a day. As soon as he finished speaking, the expression on his face became extremely annoying, and little Qinggu also disappeared. TSK, a single man and a single woman. Yi Qing Luo gave him a tight slap on the face and gave a fake smile. Ha, coax your own woman first. Look at your position in Cat's heart. It's not even comparable to me. What a waste of that face of yours. Yi Qing Luo. Zhou Mo gritted his teeth as his heart was stabbed. Yi Qing Luo couldn't be bothered with him as she turned around and left. Speaking of which, she really did not know where Dmo Xian had gone to. Just as he returned to his room, he suddenly heard a slight noise outside the door. Just as Yi Qing Luo was about to lie down on the bed, she raised her brows and looked towards the door. After a while, he heard a light knock on the door. The sound of knocking was very careful. Chapter 39-48. Just by listening to the footsteps and the rhythm of the knocking on the door, Yi Qing Luo was able to recognize who was outside the door. When Dmo Xian came, he only brought along 2 people from the imperial palace. According to what Dmo Xian said, she had specially asked Tang Beiyuan to bring her unromantic fiancé out to relax and cultivate their relationship. Because of this, he knew of their existence. Yi Qing Luo didn't specially look for them. The person at the door was silent for a moment, as if hesitating about something. After a long while, he pushed open the door and walked in. The woman was dressed in a light blue outfit that wrapped around her exquisite body. Just one look and Yi Qing Luo was able to tell that the lady's exquisite and beautiful face was filled with obvious worry. Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but frowned. Didn't Tang Beiyuan come out with her fiancé? This could also be considered a kind of honeymoon. Why? The worry on Tang Beiyuan's face was even worse than before. She didn't feel like a girl in love at all. Could it be that something had happened between her and her fiancé? Yi Qing Luo thought that Tang Beiyuan had specially come over to look for her. And with such a cautious and bashful look, she thought that she was here to seek advice on how to get along with each other before being lovers. She had not expected that when Tang Beiyuan walked in front of her, she looked at Yi Qing Luo seriously and spoke carefully. Qing Luo. You don't listen to young Master Mo's rubbish. The Overlord only has you in his heart. The Overlord and Miss June are absolutely not in that kind of relationship which young Master Mo had mentioned. As soon as he said that, Yi Qing Luo was stunned. What was going on? Why did he suddenly say this to her? Yi Qing Luo coughed fiercely. Cough. Beiyuan. Do you think that I will take Zhou Mo's words to heart? Tang Beiyuan shook her head, then nodded. I just wanted to explain on behalf of the Overlord. Yi Qing Luo stretched out her hand and grabbed Tang Beiyuan's hand, pulling her to the bedside to sit down. This matter totally doesn't require any explanation. I totally didn't put what Zhou Mo said to heart. Tang Beiyuan pursed her red lips. I know, but it's my duty. I naturally believe in Xian. Yi Qingluo leaned against the headboard. And I naturally believe in Xiao Qingwu's character. Speaking of which, DMO Xian and Jun Qingwu had met before her. If anything had happened to them, it would not have been her turn to appear. Furthermore, Yi Qingluo's lips curled upwards as she gave a chilly smile. Even if Xian had 10 guts, he wouldn't dare to mess around behind my back. After a slight pause, she continued. Even if he wants to mess around, my little Qingwu doesn't have any thoughts about him. It was not her blind trust in the friend she thought. It was a feeling. She didn't know how to describe this feeling. Oh, Tang Beiyuan replied indifferently. Then, she lowered her head in silence. There was a dejected look on her face. Beiyuan, are you and your fiancé? Yi Qingluo frowned as she raised her hand and caressed Beiyuan's glabella. To be honest, every time he saw Tang Beiyuan, the worry on her face deepened. The space between his brows was wrinkled. However, before her hand could even touch Tang Beiyuan's eyes widened. Her outstretched palm was covered by a broad and thick palm. Suddenly his body felt light. Her whole body fell into a broad and warm embrace. The elegant sandalwood fragrance filled her inner heart. A man's mellow voice floated down from above her head. When I wasn't around, Lil Luo, or seemed to be bad-mouthing me. Chapter 39-49. She hadn't seen the man for a day. Then she smelled the familiar male pheromones from the man. Yi Qingluo suddenly flew up as her arms circled around the man's neck. Xian. Did you miss me? DMO Xian's eyelids drooped slightly as his narrow peach blossom eyes seemed to ripple like a pool of spring water. Yi Qingluo's smile was like a flower as she didn't conceal it at all. Yes. The straightforward and decisive answer caused a smile to appear on the man's handsome face. He glanced at Tang Beiyuan from the corner of his eyes. It was just a glance, and Tang Beiyuan had already stood up as she silently left the room. She heard a slight sound from the room door. Yi Qingluo immediately turned her head and was about to call Tang Beiyuan. Her chin was locked by the man's slender fingers as he forcefully twisted her head in front of him as their eyes met. Her pupils were filled with the man's face. I still have something to say to Beiyuan. Why did you let her go? Even Yi Qingluo herself didn't notice that the way she was nestled in the man's arms was delicate and alluring. Even her voice and tone were unknowingly tainted with a coquettish tone. This was only in front of DMO Xian when her body and mind were completely relaxed. DMO Xian carried her up by the waist as he sat by the side of the bed and placed the young lady on his lap. His arms were tightly wrapped around the young lady's petite body. The young lady's entire body was wrapped tightly in his arms. Since you miss me, don't you have anything to say to me? His deep voice was clear and melodious. Yi Qingluo leaned her head on his chest. First come, first served. Following that, she raised her head and stared at the man's chin. Didn't you say that you specially asked Beiyuan to bring her fiancé here to nurture their relationship? Why can't I see a smile on Beiyuan's face? Don't ask about this in front of Beiyuan. DMO Xian's fingers caressed her soft lips. To her, this should be very cruel. No wonder when she wanted to ask Beiyuan if something had happened between her and her fiancé, DMO Xian appeared at the right time. She bit DMO Xian's finger as she asked vaguely, then what's going on between them? Do you expect a blockhead to understand? DMO Xian allowed her to bite, his eyes burning as he stared at her mouth. Do you think everyone is as lucky as you to be able to meet such a good husband like me? Yi Qingluo abruptly increased the strength of her teeth and released him. Shameless. After being stared at by the man's burning gaze, her body seemed to be burning with fire. This man, why did he always stare at her like he wanted to devour her? All right, Beiyuan's matter, leave it to them to settle themselves. What we need to do now is to have a good talk. DMO Xian's voice suddenly deepened, revealing a faint magnetism. What do you mean by, even if he wants to mess around? Shouldn't you explain this sentence properly? As he spoke, his voice became deeper and deeper. Yi Qingluo only felt that the world was spinning. His back was already leaning against the bed. The man's scorching hot body pressed down on her. Yi Qingluo grabbed his collar tightly as her eyes widened. You heard wrongly, I didn't say this sentence. Really? Mo Xian's smile was like the blossoming of spring flowers, as his long and narrow peach blossom eyes revealed a wavy arc, like a blooming datura, giving off an alluring yet suffocating dangerous charm. Chapter 3950. In your heart, am I someone who would mess around? Yi Qingluo wanted to avoid this question, but Mo Xian was overbearing. His warm breath even came directly to his face. Yi Qingluo's little body shrunk as she tried to move away from Mo Xian's confinement. The man's arm moved and locked onto her waist. Lil Luo, if you don't answer this question properly, you will be punished. Mo Xian gave an evil smile as his eyes were filled with evil. That evil made Yi Qingluo feel her whole body turning soft, especially her waist. Wasn't he already fed? Why was he still like this? As though he had been hungry for a long time. Mo Xian suddenly locked her hand and pressed it on the bed. He bent over and his thin lips were already on her lips. Since you don't answer, then let's start my punishment directly. Yi Qingluo. You didn't even give me a chance to answer. Normal people would never be able to understand the thoughts of a beast. Yi Qingluo fainted from the torment. She didn't know if she fainted for a while or for a long time. Yi Qingluo felt her sore body turning numb. Following that, she felt warmth spreading throughout her body. She sighed comfortably as she lazily lifted her eyelids. She then discovered that she was leaning against a bathtub. The warm water covered her neck. The temperature was just right. There was a fragrance that seemed to be able to cleanse the body and mind. The fragrance entered her nose and her soul was purified. She closed her eyes comfortably as she felt drowsy. Suddenly, a hand covered her skin. The gentle touch washed the sweat on her body. Ah Xian. She yawned as she lazily lifted her eyelids and glanced at Mo Xian who was behind her. Following that, her body moved and her head with water droplets came closer to the man's arms. It also soaked the man's clothes. Yi Qingluo smiled delightfully. Mo Xian looked at the young lady's tired face with that smile. He lovingly pinched her mischievous little face. He totally didn't care that his clothes were already soaked as he continued to gently wash the young lady's body. Yi Qingluo closed her eyes and leaned into the man's arms, enjoying his service. I haven't seen you for a day. What on earth did you and little Qinggu do? Yi Qingluo's voice sounded lazy, with a tinge of a young lady's softness. Mo Xian chuckled softly. His melodious voice in the midst of the mist was a little more seductive. Why? Didn't you say that you absolutely trust her? I'm just curious and worried. Yi Qingluo rolled her eyes at him and purposely splashed some water on the man's face. He ran out without saying a word and didn't report back for a day and a night. Even if she knew that Mo Xian would be fine. But he would also worry. Mo Xian couldn't help but laugh at the young girl's childish actions. He lowered his voice and said with a chuckle, since it's already wet, I don't mind if it gets a little wetter. As the man's voice fell, her delicate body suddenly felt light. Then, water splashed in the bathtub. The man's tall body fell into the bathtub. Yi Qingluo cried out softly as she hooked her arms around the man's neck. The man was only wearing a thin inner garment. He took a soak in the water, and was dilly-dallied by the young lady again. It was already opened, revealing a large piece of skin. Their bodies were pressed together. Mo Xian hugged the young lady tightly and whispered into her ear. It's my fault, there won't be a next time. Chapter 3951. I got a piece of news and specially asked Qinggu to check it out. Mo Xian hugged her as he explained gently. Yi Qingluo was shocked by Mo Xian's action as she sobered up. What news? Do you still remember the palace lord of the Palace of Seclusion on the surface? Mo Xian said as he continued to stir the water gently. Yi Qingluo was stunned. You mean that palace lord of the Palace of Seclusion on the surface has come to the Earth realm? Lil Luo, is so intelligent, what use do I have? Dmo Xian pretended to sigh helplessly as he pinched the young lady's tender cheeks. You're right, I indeed got the news that that person has come to the Earth realm. Towards that palace lord on the surface, Yiqing Luo had an indescribable feeling. That person was from the Palace of Seclusion on the surface. And apparently, he had a close relationship with the real mastermind of the Palace of Seclusion. But his attitude towards her was very strange. It wasn't like the Palace of Seclusion, who had deep enmity towards her. Instead, he seemed to be helping her several times. Towards that person's identity, Yiqing Luo was still very concerned about it. Her slender brows creased slightly. Then has Lil Qinggu found out? Dmo Xian lowered his eyelids as he looked at the young lady who was obviously interested. He bent down and bit the tip of her nose. Lil Luo, is very interested in that person? Yiqing Luo was in pain as she struggled to push the man away. Water splashed up. She covered her nose as she stared at him in annoyance. I'm just curious who he is. Dmo Xian tightened his arms as he hugged her tightly. No need to care who he is. Just remember that he is from the Palace of Seclusion, that's enough. Yiqing Luo. Meaning, Palace of Seclusion and her were enemies. So no matter who that palace lord on the surface was, anyway they were enemies? This man's flying vinegar was unparalleled. Yiqing Luo kept her emotions as she looked at Dmo Xian seriously. Alright, then I won't be curious anymore. But that palace lord on the surface, has he really come to the Earth realm? Dmo Xian looked at the young lady's pretentious look as he laughed. His slender fingers cupped the young lady's face as he straightened her. Then he adjusted her delicate body into a position and nestled her in his arms. He picked up a soft handkerchief and wiped the girl's delicate body. Then he continued, he has indeed come, but at the moment, we cannot be sure of his purpose. The Palace of Darkness has just done such a big thing in the land domain. Even the balance historian has been alerted. They shouldn't dare to come out and cause trouble for a while. Yiqing Luo shut her eyes as she enjoyed the man's gentle service while speaking lazily. That person came to the Earth domain to investigate the current situation in the Earth domain, or perhaps he's targeting me. Worried. Dmo Xian chuckled as he leaned over and whispered into her ear. Yiqing Luo didn't even lift her eyelids. With you around, what am I worried about? The man's husky and magnetic laughter rang in her ears. Obviously, this sentence pleased him. To be honest, she was not worried at all. The current situation in the land. No matter what, the Palace of Gloomy Darkness didn't dare to act recklessly anymore. However, that damned Palace of Gloomy Darkness liked to hide in the dark and shoot arrows. This point was indeed too disturbing. The warm water on her body and the soft touch, mixed with the man's comfortable massage technique. Yiqing Luo was so comfortable that she almost fell asleep. However, this comfortable feeling gradually became a little off. Chapter 3952. Yiqing Luo. He had tormented her so much that she had fainted. Hadn't he been satiated yet? Yiqing Luo opened her eyes expressionlessly as she grabbed his hand. Did you think I had really fallen asleep? Do you think I look like such a beast? His lips curled as his hoarse laughter was deep and pleasant to the ears. Yiqing Luo increased the strength of her fingers as she pinched his hand and replied without hesitation. Yes. Dmo Xian's laughter became even more alluring as he leaned close to her ear and breathed out warm air. Since Lil Luo has said so, your husband will naturally meet Lil Luo's expectations. That seductive voice was like a small hook that tugged at her heartstrings. The next moment, her petite body suddenly felt light. Water splashed. She was pulled by a force as her face faced towards Dmo Xian's direction, facing the man. Yiqing Luo panted lightly as her hands instinctively circled around the man's neck. Her petite body fell onto the man's chest. Damn you beast. Yiqing Luo had yet to regain her senses when the man's action made her sink into oblivion. In front of her eyes, it was as if fireworks had bloomed, extremely splendid. After that, Yiqing Luo really fainted, and only climbed up the next afternoon. She simply wanted to cry but had no tears. She should be proud. Where was her man's battle power? Or should she mourn for her future days? She would die in that beast's arms? And why is your face so ugly after you woke up? Just as she was cursing a certain beast in her heart, a beast's voice was heard by the side of her ear. Just hearing this voice, Yiqing Luo felt her waist and legs turning soft. Her line of sight moved. She saw that peerless man leaning over by the side of the bed. His hand moved. Her soft petite body fell into his arms. Yiqing Luo gave a humph as she shifted in his arms and found a comfortable position to nestle. Looking at your expression. Could it be that you're not satisfied with my performance last night? DM Xian's brows were filled with a smile. That smile was like the blooming of spring flowers, captivating one's soul. Yiqing Luo, on the other hand, quivered a little as her comfortable face trembled twice. Satisfied. Satisfied. I couldn't be more satisfied. She was afraid that the man would continue. Since my performance last night was not satisfactory, I will perform well tonight. If she really hears this, she reckons that you will die. But Yiqing Luo had apparently underestimated a certain beast's degree of beastliness. After the young girl finished her words, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. The smile in the man's eyes deepened. His handsome face, which was filled with seduction and cold lines, also became much gentler. He chuckled. He laughed so hard that Su almost exploded. Then his slender fingers clasped the girl's chin. A warm kiss landed on her lips. His kiss was infatuated. It made Yiqing Luo, whose waist and legs were originally sore, even softer and softer. Her eyes, which had just woken up, were about to tear up. Following that, the man's voice, which was so seductive that it broke the rules, rang out in a low voice as if he was possessed. Since Lil Luoer is so satisfied then, tonight I will continue to work hard to make you even more satisfied. Yiqing Luo felt numb all over. She was so frightened by his words that the feeling of that kiss, which she couldn't bear at all, was completely swept away. Her little face turned pale from fright. As DM Xian kissed, he sensed that the young girl's mood wasn't right. When he lifted his head, he saw the young girl's pale face. Her watery eyes stared at him in astonishment. That look was indeed very cute. Chapter 3953. Looks like Lil Luo was really frightened last night. Next time he had to control himself. Frighten Lil Luo. For a long time to come. Lil Luo would probably not let him touch her. DM Xian's eyes were filled with smiles as he leaned over and kissed her lips. It made the young girl's pale face blush. Only then did he release the girl's lips and let her go. I promise, next time I will be gentler. His laughter was low and hoarse as he reached out to pull the robe by the side and helped Yiqing Luo change into it. Yiqing Luo's eyes widened as she lifted her leg to kick the man. Do you still want a next time? Don't even think about it. Her feet were covered by the man's broad palm. Then he pulled with all his might. Her delicate body fell into the man's arms. The man skillfully and gently helped her get dressed. Then he carried her off the bed. Next to him, toiletries were already prepared. Yiqing Luo didn't want to move as she completed a series of actions to wake up under DM Xian's care. She had deliberately splashed the water on the man several times. He didn't even look the slightest bit displeased. His actions were still as gentle as ever as he helped her wipe away the water. Working hard without complaint, not retaliating when hit, not rebutting when scolded, made Yiqing Luo feel much better. The expression on his face softened a little. In such a sweet atmosphere, the room was filled with pink bubbles. Yiqing Luo dressed neatly and walked out of the room. She rejected DM Xian's request to carry her all the way. When she woke up, it was already noon. If she allowed DM Xian to carry her out, wasn't this clearly telling everyone, what did she and DM Xian do last night? Moreover, his entire body was sore and limp. If he didn't move, he would die. She would only feel worse. Yiqing Luo left the room and was pulled by DM Xian to the main hall. Piping hot dishes had already been prepared in the hall. Yiqing Luo rubbed her tummy as she snorted coldly at DM Xian. At least he knew his place. He knew that she was exhausted last night. Now she knew that he had taken good care of her every little bit. Yi Qingluo was like a tsundere little princess as she took her seat. After a while, Lao Lai heard that she had woken up and rushed over. After seeing the table full of delicacies, he reached out and grabbed the table. As he grabbed, he said, "Madam D, I've been waiting for you for so long just now." "Ah, Lord, what are you doing?" "Ah." His hand had yet to reach over. It was caught between two chopsticks. It was Dizun. That cold gaze and the strength of the chopsticks sent chills down old Lai's spine. He immediately retracted his hand and shrunk it into his chest. He was filled with grief and indignation. "Dizun, these were specially prepared for Diforeign. If you don't want me to touch them, just tell me. Why do you have to be so cruel?" Dmo Xian did not even cast a glance at him. Throwing the wooden chopsticks aside, he picked up a new pair of chopsticks and started to serve Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingluo took a look at the aggrieved old Lai as she ate the food which Dmo Xian sent to her mouth and said, "What did you say earlier? Is there something urgent you need me for?" Holding his hand, Lao Lai looked at the noble and elegant Dizun, who was feeding the girl. Then he looked at his swollen hand. They were all humans, but why was there such a huge difference between them? "Pei Sheng is looking for you. He said that today is the first auction of the treasure gathering, and he hopes that you can be present," Lao Lai said in an aggrieved tone. Wearing that horrifying old face, he used such an aggrieved tone. Yi Qingluo felt her hair stand on end. She had just shivered. Chapter 3954. Lao Lai immediately stood up straight, his hands hanging on both sides. Yi Qingluo patted Dmo Xian's hand and looked at old Lai. "Pei Sheng intends to hold an auction today?" Old Lai still stood straight. "Yes. This morning, Pei Sheng came to invite you, but Lord Dizun stopped him." Yi Qingluo nodded. "I'll head over after I finish eating." Old Lai took a look at Dmo Xian, and his body flashed towards the door. "I've already conveyed the message. I'll go to the treasure gathering exchange first. All of you take your time to eat." His vigorous posture made it impossible to tell that he was an old man over 50 years old. "Eat slowly, there's no hurry." Dmo Xian sent the food to her mouth. "We'll go over later." Yi Qingluo looked at the table full of delicacies. She knew that these were meticulously prepared by Dmo Xian. If she did not savor it properly, she would be letting down Dmo Xian's heart. Over at treasure gathering, even though the auction started in the morning, it will also last until night. She was in no hurry. Therefore, it was already half an hour later before he could comfortably fill his stomach. Yi Qingluo had just stood up and was preparing to head over to the treasures exchange hall with Dmo Xian. Suddenly, a black figure appeared in front of them in a flash. It was a cold-looking man, about 25 or 26 years old. His face was solemn, and he looked very much like an old cadre. Just one look and Yi Qingluo was able to guess this person's identity. Tang Beiyuan's fiancé, Lang Lixian. Why is he here? When Dmo Xian saw Lang Lixian, a sliver of astonishment flashed past his eyes. Lang Lixian took a look at Yi Qingluo and walked quickly towards Dmo Xian as he whispered something into his ear. Dmo Xian's expression sunk slightly. From the corner of his eyes, he shot a glance at Yi Qingluo's direction. Yi Qingluo understood and smiled. "If you have something to do, go ahead first." After all, Dmo Xian was an emperor of the imperial palace, and his status in the upper realm was not ordinary. Naturally, there were many miscellaneous matters that required his attention. Yi Qingluo wasn't a lady who pestered endlessly. When it was time to act coquettishly, she would do so. Be rational when you need to be rational. Dmo Xian pursed his lips slightly. "The auction. There's still old Lai and the rest at the auction, so I'll head over alone," Yi Qingluo replied. Dmo Xian stretched out his hand and hugged Yi Qingluo as he lowered his head and planted a kiss on her forehead. "I will be back as soon as possible. Wait for me tonight." When Yi Qingluo opened her eyes, the man was nowhere to be seen. She looked at the horizon for a long time and sighed. The first auction of the treasure gathering hall was extremely lively. Xiao family had even specially rented a place for Pei Sheng to play around, because of the disruption of the previous auction. The commotion of the treasure-gathering auction this time was not much different from the auction fair. The big shots of many forces came to keep watch. It was impossible to tell that before the auction, the treasures-gathering trading house was a trading house that no one cared about, and had almost closed down. Yiqing Luo didn't want to cause too much of a commotion, in case those big shots took turns to chat awkwardly. She specially adjusted her hairstyle and makeup, and also wore a veil to cover her face. Although his aura had weakened quite a bit, but it still couldn't hide her stunning beauty. Yiqing Luo had just walked out of the auction house, and was about to enter. Suddenly a number of ladies bumped into her from behind. They were chattering as fragrant powder was scattered all over. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she evaded the lady when she bumped into her. Chapter 39:55. The ladies fell onto the ground as they immediately cried out, "Ouch, ouch, ouch." All of them were like weak willows swaying in the wind, swaying their waists as they climbed up from the ground. Following that, they swarmed over to help up the disheveled lady who had fallen right at the bottom. After helping the man up, Zhang Wuji said. A lady who looked extremely pampered stared angrily at Yiqing Luo. "Don't you have eyes? What did you bump into? Can you afford to offend our sacred lady?" Hearing a sharp voice, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but frowned as she cast a sidelong glance over. She didn't want to create trouble at the first round of the auction, so she didn't bother about their baffling bumping over. This group of people actually had the cheek to criticize her? Heh, sacred lady? Yiqing Luo's first thought was Qiao families. Qiao Yilu, who had died in the auction. Qiao Yilu had just died not too long ago. Linglong Palace had already arranged for a new sacred lady to arrive at without embroiling city so quickly. The 6 ladies in front of her, all of their looks were considered top-notch, and the dresses they were wearing were luxurious and dignified. She could tell that they were all young missies from extremely well-off families. When the ladies saw that Yiqing Luo didn't have any reaction towards their reprimands and even sized them up, they were so infuriated that their faces turned red. "Slut! What are you looking at? Are we people that a lowly person like you can look at directly?" Another lady echoed, "That's right, don't you know what status you have, to actually dare to stand at the entrance of the auction house? Who doesn't know that today is the first round of the auction house, and various powerhouses will be there to support us?" A lady covered her mouth as she laughed sarcastically. A lady intentionally standing here in a flirtatious manner, what else could it be for? The few of them looked at Yiqing Luo with eyes filled with ridicule. Yiqing Luo glanced at them indifferently and retracted her gaze, not bothering to bother about this bunch of retards. She lifted her feet and walked towards the auction house. She had just turned around when the ladies behind her rushed up and blocked her path. "Slut! Offending our sacred lady and still trying to escape?" The ladies' faces were filled with ridicule, with a playful smile. Apparently, they had treated Yiqing Luo as a toy which could serve as a foil for their status. "Enough." A sweet-sounding voice suppressed the mockery of the few people. Soon after, the woman surrounded by the 5 women, the Holy Virgin, slowly walked over. The woman was dressed in a white robe, and had a white veil over her face. She looked like an ethereal fairy. Her attire was very similar to Qiao Yilu's. Did she think that, by imitating Qiao Yilu, she would be able to become Qiao Yilu? Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly, as she calmly looked at the approaching figure of the woman. The veil hid the impatience on her lips. His half-squinted eyes gave off a sharp feeling. The sharpness of the blade made the woman feel an indescribable chill run through her entire body as she walked over. The lady's willowy brows creased as she suspiciously sized up Yiqing Luo. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't associate that chill with the young girl in front of him. "Saintess, this bitch is obviously a vixen. I think she must have heard that the overlord would come to the auction today, so she purposely waited here." Chapter 39:56. The arrogant lady's voice wasn't considered soft. Yiqing Luo was closer, so she naturally heard what she said. When she heard the words overlord, her brows couldn't help but rose. Did they just say, "Oxian"? This lady who was addressed as Sacred Maiden was specially here to meet Xian? It was just a slight change in expression, but it was seen clearly by those ladies. One of the ladies immediately pointed at her and shouted. Look, when she heard the Overlord's name, her eyes lit up. She's indeed here to seduce the Overlord. Slut. Who do you think you are? The Overlord will only belong to our Sacred Maiden. The arrogant lady ridiculed and was delighted. This bunch of ladies, their mouths were really unforgiving. It was a barrage of words. There wasn't any intention to control their voices. It attracted the attention of the passers-by. This was the first auction of the treasure-gathering hall, and also the last auction of the treasure-gathering hall. Those who came and went were all people with extremely high statuses. It was extremely rare to hear such a scene of people scolding and pestering endlessly on the streets. Originally, they didn't want to bother about it. However, when he heard those women calling him His Majesty and Saintess again and again, he couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. This made quite a number of people stop in their tracks as they crowded around. Some powerhouses' big shots recognized those few ladies. Those ladies were all from the Earth realm, and were the daughters of the top-ranked large clans. Among the large clans, their reputation was extremely good. To be able to make these noble young ladies flock to her. What kind of status did she have? Everyone sized up these few ladies as their eyes were filled with probing. But no one interfered in this matter. Seeing the surrounding big shots crowding around, those ladies didn't feel embarrassed at all. Instead, they felt even more interested. Especially that arrogant lady. Her chest puffed out even more and her waist straightened even more. The Overlord is still waiting for our Sacred Maiden to meet up. He doesn't have the leisure to waste time with you here. Saying that, she arrogantly commanded. Slut, earlier you've offended the Sacred Maiden. Kneel down and apologize to us and we'll forgive your offense. Yi Qingluo. Where did this severely retarded patient come from? Hurry and drag her back. Such a stupid and retarded way. Didn't she feel ashamed? Could it be that he didn't notice? The way the big bosses looked at them was definitely not supportive of their actions, right? Was he retarded or blind? In the face of this kind of trouble with a weak battle, Yi Qingluo didn't even want to bother about him. However, what made her slightly curious was whether the Overlord they were talking about was the same person as her Xian. Slut, are you scared, silly? The arrogant woman shouted for some time but didn't see any response from Yi Qingluo. So she raised her hand and pushed Yi Qingluo. Just as he moved, his wrist was locked by Yi Qingluo. Crack! The bones in the woman's wrist were broken. The arrogant woman let out a blood-curdling scream and withdrew her hand. You! How dare you! Yi Qingluo's action made those complacent ladies' atmosphere congeal as pairs of penetrating eyes stared over. Yi Qingluo took out her handkerchief and wiped her hand which she had touched earlier. Every strand of hair was carefully wiped. It was as if he had touched the plague. Then he threw the handkerchief on the ground. Following that, he raised his head slightly and looked at the few people in front of him. Yi Qingluo's brows were suffused with a faint smile. That smile was very cold. There was a kind of sharp feeling. Chapter 3957. Oh, you want me to apologize? Yi Qingluo tilted her head as her voice was clear. Even though she was wearing a veil, her side profile was still breathtakingly beautiful. Yi Qingluo's actions, coupled with her obvious provocative reply, made the lady's expressions sunk one by one. The lady squinted her eyes. Do you know who we are? How dare you make a move in front of Sacred Maiden? Do you believe that as long as our Sacred Maiden opens her mouth to the Overlord, the Overlord will make your life worse than death? After saying this, the lady even held onto Sacred Maiden's arm tightly in protest. Sacred Maiden's beautiful eyes squinted slightly as her gaze turned icy cold. Apparently, she was extremely dissatisfied with Yi Qingluo's action of making her lose face in front of everyone. But Yi Qingluo's expression didn't even change. Her eyes were curved, still that mischievous arc. Oh, Overlord? Yi Qingluo's voice was light and carried a sliver of suspicion. The Overlord you mentioned, is it the Overlord that I know of? The lady's expressions turned extremely ugly. Are you trying to say that we intentionally used the overlord to cheat you? Heh. Who do you think you are? Are you worthy for us to cheat you? There is only one overlord in this world. The overlord we are talking about is naturally the most mysterious overlord in the upper realm, Dmo Xian. Do you know what relationship our sacred maiden has with the overlord? If we say it out, you'll be scared to death. The ladies were all talking at once as they sneered. Each and every one of them were arrogant, as though they could use the prestige of overlord to do whatever they wanted, whereas that sacred maiden who was being complimented by everyone had not stopped them from the start, nor did she open her mouth to explain. She had a tacit attitude. This made the various powerhouses' big shots unable to bear it when they heard this sentence. Overlord? And this sacred maiden? Overlord and Imperial Madam's relationship is so good. How could there possibly be a third person? If she has no relationship with the overlord, how would she dare to speak out the overlord's name in front of everyone? You must know that the overlord and Imperial Madam are still in the Earth realm. The boss of the treasure gathering hall is Imperial Madam's friend, so Imperial Madam and the overlord will definitely come to the auction today. If Imperial Madam bumped into these few people, perhaps even the entire family would be implicated. The surrounding voices made the women's faces turn even uglier. However, he was surrounded by big shots. No matter how angry he was, no matter how much he wanted to refute, he still suppressed his emotions. Piffed, Yi Qing Luo laughed out when she heard those people's discussions. Her smile caused the hateful gazes of the women to instantly fall on her. So that's how it is. I was wondering why you people are so bored. Every time you catch a person, you think he's here for Lord Dizun. Yi Qing Luo smiled lightly, the corners of her eyes curved, narrow and mischievous. So it's you guys who are feeling guilty. Who's guilty? The arrogant woman's face turned pale. She held her broken hand and stared at her fiercely. Our Holy Virgin is here to meet His Majesty. Yi Qing Luo smiled without saying a word. In the eyes of the women, that smile was a mockery and provocation. They were so angry that their eyes turned red. At this moment, suddenly, the crowd was filled with lively chatter. Boss Pei, why are you here personally? Boss Pei, long time no see. Congratulations. Chapter 3958. As the greetings rang, everyone's gaze immediately shifted from the ladies towards Pei Sheng, who had just walked out of the auction house. Pei Sheng was dressed in a dignified and luxurious ink-black brocade robe today. His hair combed neatly. He looked exactly like a rich young master. His every movement exuded an extraordinary aura and a graceful demeanor. In Yi Qing Luo's eyes, it was as though the son whom she had raised had finally grown up. Pei Sheng didn't show any signs of stage fright in front of a group of big shots. With a slight smile, he nodded towards the crowd to express his greeting. That is the boss of the Treasures Exchange Hall. He looks so handsome. I didn't expect Boss Pei to be so young. He's walking towards us. Those few ladies looked towards Pei Sheng's direction as their eyes were almost glued onto Pei Sheng. The arrogant lady endured the pain as she leaned her body towards the sacred maiden, and after that, she shot a vicious and complacent look at Yi Qing Luo. Did you see that? Boss Pei has personally come out to welcome our sacred maiden. You're dead meat. Pei Sheng was indeed walking towards them. His target was very decisive. He crossed the crowd and walked over. The few ladies were so agitated that their faces flushed red. Even the aloof and respectable sacred maiden in the middle had a faint complacent look in her eyes. Did Boss Pei hear about the small fight outside the auction house, and specially came over to mediate? He's indeed Boss Pei. He's personally here for such a small matter. He's really responsible. If what that sacred maiden said is true, then that young lady is probably in trouble. Who knows? Boss Pei and Imperial Madam are close friends, and if sacred maiden's words were to reach Imperial Madam's ears, Imperial Madam would not let this matter rest. The surrounding big shots were discussing as they watched the show. Pei Sheng walked to the front of the ladies. He paused as he took a look at those few coquettish ladies. After that, he was about to walk past them. Suddenly, a figure blocked in front of him. Boss Pei, I'm so sorry to make you come out personally to fetch me. Pei Sheng was blocked. In front of him was a lady dressed in white with a veil. Who was this lady? You don't even know her. Why did you fetch her? Even though he was complaining in his heart, he still had to maintain a decent smile on his face. This young lady. I know His Majesty asked you to come and pick me up, right? The saintess maintained her elegant smile and raised her head slightly, looking very arrogant. Dizun. Pei Sheng subconsciously looked towards Yi Qingluo. What and what? If the venerable sovereign were to pick someone up, it would be Luo. What does it have to do with this strange woman? Pei Sheng only heard from Old Lai that he sensed Yi Qingluo's presence, and specially came to the entrance to receive her. He hadn't even reached Yi Qingluo. However, he was stopped by these strange little girls. Whereas Yi Qingluo stood by the side with her arms crossed, enjoying the show. He had not figured out the situation yet. Suddenly, a figure flew towards him. Pei Sheng was so frightened that he quickly moved to the side. He saw a woman, who had thrown herself at him a little too fiercely. She was unable to stand firmly for a moment, and staggered a few times. Fortunately, the woman beside him pulled him back in time. The woman's face was spoiled and her eyes were red as she clutched her wrist and whimpered. Boss Pei, you have to stand up for us. Look at that slut. She dealt me a vicious hand at your auction's entrance. Look at my hand. It's broken. Chapter 39:59. Pei Sheng looked towards the direction which the lady was pointing at. Following that, he met with the young lady's smiling eyes. By his ear, the lady was still crying as she continued. You don't know that slut has no right to enter Boss Pei's auction house. She has ulterior motives towards the overlord, intentionally acting coquettishly, trying to seduce the overlord. The arrogant lady pushed the sacred maiden forward again. This is Shadowless City's sacred maiden Mu Qiulan. The reason why sacred maiden is here is firstly to take part in Boss Pei's auction, and secondly is to attend the overlord's appointment. When she mentioned the two words attend, the arrogant lady intentionally emphasized on her tone. She even looked at Yi Qingluo complacently. Our sacred maiden is not like some people, racking her brains to cling on to a man and sell herself. Shadowless City's sacred maiden? Pei Sheng's brows creased slightly. With Qiao Yulu in front of him. Towards the sacred maiden two words. Pei Sheng felt some disgust in his heart. But she was after all another main city's sacred maiden. He still had to give her some face on the surface. He gave a distant yet polite smile. So it's Shadowless City's sacred maiden. Please forgive me for not going out to welcome you. This was originally just a polite sentence. When that arrogant lady heard that, she took it seriously as the complacent expression on her face became even more obvious. Sacred maiden is kind-hearted and will not sue you over such a small matter. Following that, she raised her arm and pointed towards Yi Qingluo as her voice was mixed with viciousness and gnashing her teeth. But I still need to trouble Boss Pei to deal with this slut who harbors ill intentions towards the overlord and even offended sacred maiden. As she said that, she stared malevolently at Yi Qingluo with a complacent look. Otherwise, if our sacred maiden were to fly into a rage, I believe the consequences. Boss Pei is very clear about it. Pei Sheng. He wasn't clear, totally not clear. But he was very clear that if Yi Qingluo were to fly into a rage, the consequences would be extremely horrifying. After she finished acting cool, the arrogant lady looked at Pei Sheng with a complacent look. But she discovered that Pei Sheng's expression was complicated, totally without any intention to go along with her. The arrogant lady's face sunk as she stomped her feet angrily. Boss Pei, our sacred maiden is invited by the overlord. You don't wish for this matter to reach the overlord's ears, right? The big shots watching couldn't help but laugh. She's the young mistress of a prominent clan in Shadowless City, right? If I'm not mistaken, I met her at the banquet in Shadowless City. What kind of family could raise such a moron? Who doesn't know that the overlord and Lady D are very close? Who doesn't know that Boss Pei is Lady D's friend? That's right. You're using the Varch to pressure Boss Pei in front of him. You must be out of your mind, right? One by one, The big shots began to dig up the identities of these young ladies. Even their families were ridiculed. The haughty woman and the others naturally heard the mockery. She even heard them start to mock her family. All of them were so angry that their faces turned red. He dared to be angry, but he didn't dare to say anything. Pei Sheng looked sympathetically at the woman who was still whimpering. He agreed with the big shots very much. This group of women really thought highly of themselves. In front of the main character, she kept referring to him as Di Zun, in such an ambiguous manner. Don't think that His Majesty is the king of jealousy. The moment Yi Qing Luo's vinegar jar was overturned. Chapter 3960. As expected, when Pei Sheng was looking at Yi Qing Luo, he saw Yi Qing Luo's eyes curling upwards, coquettish, devilish, like a blooming poppy, but he could clearly see it. Under the blossoming flames, the hidden sharpness. But these women in front of him apparently didn't know about it. They even attributed the reason why they were in such a predicament to Yi Qing Luo. Pei Sheng coughed lightly. "I'm sorry. I'm afraid I'm unable to do anything about your request." As he was saying that, he walked past the few women and walked towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. What do you mean?" the arrogant woman retorted angrily. "What do you mean by unable to do anything?" A lady by the side pulled the arrogant woman's arm. "I heard that Boss Pei seems to have a fiancé. Could it be it's—" Before the word her could be said, Pei Sheng's eyes widened as he interrupted sharply. "Don't talk nonsense. I still want to live on." Earlier, when old Master Huangfu forcefully put him and Yi Qing Luo against each other, it had already caused the overlord to be unhappy with him. Pei Sheng didn't dare to hear such words again. "Boss Pei." Mu Qiulan raised her head as her beautiful eyes met Pei Sheng's gaze. Her voice was calm with a tinge of elegance, but the words that came out from her mouth were filled with ridicule. A lady who uses her looks to serve others can also make Boss Pei helpless. This makes this saintess doubt Boss Pei's ability. She paused slightly and laughed. Her gaze seemed to look towards the direction of the auction venue. Apparently, she was doubting if this auction had any meaning at all. Pei Sheng's eyes turned slightly cold as his gaze sunk, but the smile on his lips was even more gentle and polite. He looked at Mu Qiulan as he gave a distant smile. "Saintess is right to lecture me. But this lady, even the overlord doesn't dare to touch her, not to mention me." When he said that, instantly, the surrounding big shots were in an uproar. Even the overlord didn't dare to touch her? How was that possible? Was there anyone in this world whom the overlord didn't dare to touch? Mu Qiulan didn't expect Pei Sheng to reply in this way. When she heard this, her beautiful eyes trembled as she looked in disbelief at that calm and indifferent young lady who was standing there lazily. A thought arose in her mind. The more he thought about it, the more flustered he became. At this moment, a figure squeezed out of the crowd. When the big shots saw that person, they immediately made way for him. Soon after, another figure walked out of the auction hall. It's Patriarch Qiao. There's also the seniors from Hell Palace. Why are they here? It seems like this farce has already spread to the venue. This is going to be interesting. The appearance of Patriarch Qiao and Old Lai caused a huge uproar. The women looked at the two people walking towards them. Then he turned to look at Mu Qiulan and said, "Saintess, Clan Head Qiao and the seniors from the Underworld Palace are here. They will definitely give us." Before the words justice could even come out of his mouth, Patriarch Qiao and Old Lai directly walked past them, stopping right in front of Yi Qing Luo and Pei Sheng. "Brat, I asked you to pick someone up. Why are you taking so long? Don't you know it's very busy inside?" Lao Lai patted Pei Sheng's shoulder. Patriarch Qiao looked at Yi Qing Luo. "Imperial Madam, you've reached the venue. Why don't you go in directly?" You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.